Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the officials of the Tobago House of Assembly. My name is Bridget Anizette George, and I am the chairman of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Committee of Public Administration and Appropriations, the PAAC, has the mandate to consider and report to the House on A, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies to ensure that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. B, the budgetary expenditure of government agencies as it occurs and keeps Parliament informed of how the budget allocation is being implemented. And C, the administration of government agencies to determine hindrances to their efficiency and to make recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. The purpose of this meeting is an examination into the expenditure and development program of certain key divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. The role of the committee is to assist the stakeholders in achieving the efficient delivery of services while ensuring that expenditure is embarked upon in accordance with parliamentary approval. Determine the challenges being faced and possible solutions to these challenges, and make recommendations for improvement of public administration. The meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, and X @ttparliament. I will therefore now invite members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting from my right, my furthest right.
Simon de Nobrega, member.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lawrence Hislop, member.
Hi, good afternoon. Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Good afternoon. Charlotte Patterson, member.
Afternoon, everyone. Hasselbachers, Tobagonian, member.
Thank you very much. And I therefore now will ask the members of the THA to introduce themselves, starting with the Chief Administrator.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Toby-Koshi, the Chief Administrator of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Carl Murray. I am the Administrator in the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development.
Good evening, everyone. Julian Skeet, Administrator in the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Melissa James Guy, Administrator in the Office of the Chief Secretary.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shelley Trim, Acting Administrator in the Division of Finance, Trade, and the Economy.
If we have any difficulty, we could go start left to right on each row.
Good afternoon. I am Anselm Richards, the Chief Technical Advisor to Tobago House Assembly.
Good afternoon. I am Armand Jackson, Director of Planning in the Office of the Chief Secretary.
Good afternoon. I am Cherise Wallace, Director of Land Management Department under the Office of the Chief Secretary.
Good afternoon. I am Sonia Davidson, Acting Accounting Executive 1, Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Charleston Thomas, Technical Advisor in the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities, and Transportation.
Good afternoon. I'm Carlos Hazel, Technical Advisor in the Division of Finance, Trade, and the Economy.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anne-Marie Degazon, Policy Director, Performance Management.
Good afternoon. I am Licia Bennett Douglas, Acting HRO Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Natalie James Douglas, Acting Human Resource Officer 3, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Delia Ross Blake, Management Accountant, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Thank you, everyone. And therefore, to open the conversation, I'll invite the Chief Administrator to make a brief opening statement, if she so pleases. Chief Administrator.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Public Administration and Appropriation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly on a range of operational and financial matters within the scope of the THA's authority and mandate, vested under the THA Act No. 40 of 1996. As you are aware, the Act establishes the responsibilities of the Tobago House of Assembly to facilitate Tobago's sustainable development and to govern matters under the 5th schedule with efficiency, transparency, and accountability. The 5th schedule tasks the THA with the management of critical areas, including finance, tourism, culture, infrastructure, licensing, education, including curriculum, and community development, among others, each of which significantly influences Tobago's socio-economic development. Accordingly, the THA Act also sets up the executive and administrative framework for the discharge of the THA's responsibilities. The Executive Council of the THA, headed by the Chief Secretary, is charged with carrying out the functions of the Assembly. Part 7 of the Act sets out that the Chief Administrator, a public officer, shall be responsible as accounting officer for the division assigned by the Chief Secretary. Each of the 9 divisions of the Assembly operates under the supervision of an administrator who serves as accounting officers for those divisions, as stated in the THA Act. Divisions operate within specific mandates for 5th schedule responsibilities. In respect of finance, the THA is guided by Part 4 of the Act, which includes approval for financial rules to be laid in Parliament for the proper management of the finance of the Tobago House of Assembly. These rules are yet to be laid under the 1996 Act, and therefore we are constrained to operate under the limitations of the rules of 1990 that were made under the Act No. 37 of 1980, and apply these along with the Exchequer and Audit Act, the other laws, Ministry of Finance circulars, and national guidelines. For fiscal 2024, the Tobago House of Assembly committed to driving the evolution of sustainable, prosperous, and a resilient Tobago through operational efficiencies, capacity building, and digital transformation across the divisions, centering on enhancing service delivery, improving institutional effectiveness, and building resilience within the Tobago House of Assembly systems, processes to better administrate public policy and to serve the people of Tobago. While we are always open to discussing our challenges and receiving feedback to improve our administrative policies, processes, and procedures, the executive of the THA is clear in its intent to foster lasting socio-economic growth and development. In advancing towards our vision of Tobago being the greatest little island on the planet, greater focus will be placed on aligning our operations to the identified development agenda priorities, ensuring that there is strategic flexibility, prudence in resource allocation, effective governance, and the judicious performance management system towards a thriving, resilient, inclusive, and sustainable Tobago society. The matters before us today are key to the operations of the Office of the Chief Secretary, the Division of Finance, Trade, and Economy, the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, and the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. And we acquiesce to providing the operational clarity sought by this esteemed committee. Even so, as we look forward to fiscal 2025 and beyond, the THA is committed to implementing the strategic flexibility model across all divisions to guide the administration in decision-making and assertive action towards improved performance at all levels of governance, creating pathways to measure development, and executing our responsibilities with the highest standards of public service. In this regard, we welcome the productive dialogue that we will have today. And before I close, let me take the opportunity to wish Senator Hislop a happy birthday. May you continue to walk courageously in the calling that the Lord has placed upon your heart. Madam Chairman, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Administrator. Okay, so I think I join with you in saying that we welcome this opportunity for what we expect to be a very fruitful discussion based on the submission. And for us, I think the best place to anchor or to start off, remove the anchor for the discussion. You spoke about, the aspiration of Tobago being the greatest little island on the planet. And my understanding in getting there, you have adopted what is called a strategy selective model, right? In fact, what you says is that has been adopted by the THA as the macro policy framework, which will guide Tobago's sustainable development. So I would like if you could expand a bit more on what is the strategic selective model that you have adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The process started with the people's mandate, consultation with the people, and then the executive, the chief secretary issuing mandate letters to each secretary, and the development of 12 developmental goals and 12 priority areas for development. At the macro, at the global level, I'll invite the Chief Technical Advisor of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mr. Anselm Richards, to expand on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chief Administrator. Madam Chair, we are pursuing Tobago's development using the development pathway model, which has its foundation in what the Chief Administrator would have alluded to. The development pathway is working around the 12 goals and the 21 strategic focus or priority areas. Those areas are shifted to the division for sectoral planning. The division will develop the programs and projects and the policies that will meet those objectives and goals and will implement those projects. And we use the development pathway model to monitor and evaluate our progress as we go towards the greatest little island on the planet. Our first phase of this project spans 2025 to 2040. It's a 20 years projection, and we set out our targets and our goals as we move along.
Let me ask this. So all the strategic selectivity model is your information gathering process through the town hall meetings?
No. No, Madam Chair. The strategic selectivity is the institutional strategy that is used to prioritize the projects and programs that will be executed because of the limited resources that is appropriated to the THA. So that's the institutional strategy that is used to order our priorities in terms of our projects and programs because of our resource constraints. So it is built on the pathway development platform. That is what replaced the development plan. But the strategy to execute programs and projects is the strategic selectivity model because of resource constraint.
So let me ask this. So the strategic selectivity model is what you would have said that allocates your high priority areas.
Yes.
And in page 6, I think, of your submission, you would have detailed how you reprioritize projects and you determine high priority projects based on 5 factors: ongoing projects with allocations, ongoing projects without allocations, and so on. That is what is the strategic selectivity model.
The ongoing projects and the projects with allocations are projects that are in the pipeline.
Right.
But the strategic selectivity selects projects based on impact, preparedness for start shovel-ready projects, value for money, and that kind of, those variables will inform the projects as we go along.
All right, so maybe it will come out in other questions that we would ask, because these 5 areas, I don't know if you have these submissions, yes, which are on page 6 going into page 7, right? Because I don't remember seeing things like value for money and so on in it. I want to know specifically if these 5 areas, which talk about the ongoing projects without the ongoing projects with allocations, without allocations, the new projects, with allocations, the new projects without allocations, the new or modified projects, that fits in where?
That's an operational issue. Strategic selectivity speaks to a model by which you select projects based on the project impact, the scope, and how you can scale the project to create the kind of socio-economic transformation you are targeting. Okay. Those issues about projects in the pipeline and available resources, those are administrative and operational issues. But the strategic selectivity model is specific, and there are criteria which you use to select your projects.
Okay, and where in the submission do we have the criteria?
Madam Chair, if I could interject at this point. The strategic selectivity institutional framework, if I could share with you what was given to me as Chief Administrator, that gave me a deeper understanding of what it is. It says in fiscal 2025, the strategic selectivity institutional framework will be the guiding principle for crafting the THA's developmental strategies and determining the development program priorities. Strategic selectivity involves prioritizing certain policies, initiatives, and resource allocation to achieve the most impactful and sustainable outcomes for Tobago. This approach requires a deep understanding of Tobago's unique context, including its economic conditions, social needs, political landscape, and environmental factors. This model focuses on high-priority areas where projects and programs are likely to impact a wider cross-section of positive transformation and change. Selection of DP priorities or development program, that priorities will be based on the criteria highlighted hereunder. Impact. What is the potential impact of the program project on the economy, society, or environment? Does it address the pressing issues in Tobago? Cost effectiveness. What is the cost relative to the expected benefits? Will it deliver value for money? Feasibility. Is the project technically, politically, and financially feasible? Can it be implemented within the available resources and time frame? Sustainability. Will the project benefit be long-lasting? Will it contribute to sustainable development on the island? Risk. What are the potential risks? Financial, operational, reputational, environmental, and how can they be mitigated? And lastly, social impact. Will project improve human capital in areas such as education, health, or social protection? So the strategic selectivity model is a framework within the broader development construct, where based on our limited resources, we try to prioritize based on projects and programs meeting these criteria. It doesn't mean that we have departed from the rational approach to strategy. This is at the, as we say, Vision 2030, is at the level of for the island, is at that level. And from that now, the divisions will do our strategic plan guided by national as well as the Tobago House of Assembly developmental pathway.
Very much. So let me ask this then. In the submission that you all have said that you're engaged in the build out of this model, might I ask what that means?
Currently, we have all the technical advisors of all the divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly, led by a chief consultant, and they are the ones who are putting this framework together. We are in process, and the chief technical advisor of the Tobago House of Assembly could share with us how far we are with respect to that.
Mr. Richards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are at the point where our plan is to have the development pathway hosted on our website so the world can have access to what we are doing with all the monitoring indicators. We have built out the frame. We have our IT people doing the website. The chief consultant on this project is Dr. Thompson. He's working remotely. We are at the stage where we are reviewing the interface, the web page interface. We are working with the division to build out the specific monitoring indicators for their projects and programs. So we are that. We are hoping to have this a soft launch of the website by the end of 2024, December 31st, or no, before December 31st, 2024.
Okay, so that's in terms of the website which will share the information.
Yes.
Yes? But part of it, I think, was involved with town meetings and so on. Yes? In terms of gathering your information to build this model. From my understanding, one of your, I don't want to use the pathways, but one of your methods was, as you say, public participation, public interface. And you were using town hall meetings to do that.
Yeah.
Seeing that you are at the stage of a soft launch in about the next 6 weeks, is it that the town meetings aspect has been completed? Because the submission gives us the impression that unless these phases are finished, you don't have a complete model and framework.
Well, it's a work in progress. It's a very germane activity. It's not static, so it keeps moving. We keep consulting with the stakeholders, the clients, Tobagonians. But remember the mandate, the people's mandate was built out of those town hall meetings. We got the submission and the concerns of Tobagonian, and that was developed into what we call the people's mandate. From that people's mandate, the administration issued mandate letters to each secretary to guide their development of the sector or the division for which they are responsible. Coming from that, we developed the goals and the 21 focal area, which will inform our development planning pathway.
So, in terms of, I'm really confused, you'll have to help me, this development pathway, that is towards the greatest little island on the planet, right? That's your strategic development pathway, Tobago 2025 to 2045.
Right.
Yeah? That has been established, that has been developed already, or that is still being developed?
That is still being developed. It's a work in progress.
Okay. And the SSM is a work in progress too?
Could you repeat that, Madam Chair? Oh, the strategic selective model?
You call it the SSM, you know, not me.
Well, that is not a work in progress. That is an established framework that is being used by international agencies to guide developing countries as to how they can proceed with their development strategy.
Right.
It is used extensively by the IDB.
Yeah, but certainly it is not a uniform model. The framework will be tweaked for Tobago.
But strategic selectivity has key considerations.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, the model that we are following, we are using the strategic selectivity, as I mentioned before, to inform the prioritizing of our programs and projects because of our resource constraints. So that is where the strategic selectivity model is deployed in the selection and ordering of our priorities. The planning pathway sets out the journey we have to travel to become the greatest little island on the planet. So the planning pathway gives you that journey. Our first 20-year journey is from 2025 to 2045. That will be populated with a number of programs and projects with key monitoring indicators as we travel towards what we have set for ourselves as the greatest little island. I don't know if that brings clarity to...
All right, so it means that from this fiscal year is when you begin on that pathway? Yes?
Basically,
okay.
Yes.
So I want to ask, in terms of the town hall meetings that you had identified, which is your institutional participatory feedback process, where are you with that?
We have completed, the Tobago House of Assembly has completed a series of town hall meetings going from community to community to get the feedback, to know what is it that the people want this government to do. The next phase should be the technical team going out to get more technical information, rather than what we saw when we went out with this town hall meeting. It wasn't intended to be a political meeting, but a lot of persons in the community saw the opportunity to come out to vent, what is it that they would like, a lot of times it was employment issues. They want a job here, a job there. So what we're trying to do is to restructure that so that we could get the better information for our decision making. So in the process of reconsidering the approach to getting the information from the communities.
Right. So I'm just trying to follow what I'm hearing from what we have here in the submissions, okay? And maybe it's because of the passage of time, and I'm now hearing that you've reconfigured, because what you had said to us, you had finished phase 1 of your town hall meetings, and you were going to embark on phase 2. If I understand you well, phase 1 may not have given you the type of information you wanted.
Yes.
Okay, and therefore you have now reconfigured how you will proceed. So rather than having a phase 2 meetings, which you said would be held to report and confirm the macro policy framework, when that was completed, you decided to reconfigure how you go about getting your macro policy framework. Do I understand it well?
We're trying, rather than continue in the vein of the town hall meeting, we're trying to create a structure that will allow us to capture the kind of information that we need.
Okay. And let me ask you, when do you anticipate that will be completed?
That kind of information is guided by the technical team. So I'll ask the Chief Technical Advisor of the Tobago House of Assembly.
Mr. Richards?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we are doing also in relationship, as part of the feature of the development pathway interface, which is the website, there will be a platform where members of the public can have accounts and they can submit suggestions. So it's a continuous process. It is very organic. It is not just meetings and you stop, because we are living in a very fluid society. So we are building an infrastructure that we can have continuous engagement of our stakeholders. That's the strategy that we are deploying.
I'm going to open up the conversation a bit. Member Webster Roy, is it you have seen your hand? If not, I'll ask somebody else. All right, so Member Hislop. Oh, you had a question, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, through you to the Chief Technical Advisor. I've been listening and I'm a little bit confused. And I'm a Tobagonian, so break it down so that I could understand it. So when I go back out into my constituency, I could communicate this vision to my constituents so we buy in to this development process. So using the website as the example, when it's launched, I click on the website, what is there? What do I tell my constituents to expect? How do I communicate this process of development, this journey towards the greatest little island, so that my constituents could buy in and we support this initiative? Mr. Richards.
Thank you. To you, Madam Chief Administrator. When you go to the website, you can click on any division and you will see all the projects and programs that have been executed, the targets and the achievement, the monitoring indicators. You will have a feature where you can submit recommendations and questions. And that will be processed and sent to the respective technical persons in the division for consideration. So you have an active interface with the program. So it's not just a flat, static development framework that we are doing. We are doing something that is organic, it is living, our population can interface with it, they can ask questions, it is moving, it gives you the opportunity to make adjustments as you go along, because you know the planning process is very fluid, it is not a static thing, and circumstances change. So it's a living planning process that we are deploying in the context of Tobago's development, which is called the development planning pathways.
And what would be the M&E framework linked to that?
The monitoring and evaluation framework will be executed by the divisions. So the divisions will be they will have a unit evaluating their project based on the set targets and objectives of each project and program, right? Using both quantitative and qualitative data to see how we are progressing along this pathway. The indicators will be published alongside each project and what we set to achieve for each cycle of the project activities.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to back up a little bit based on the information that we just got from the Chief Technical Advisor. And I'm reading from the submission, from your written submission, which says, the information shared by residents directly informed the key developmental pillars and strategic objectives of the strategic selectivity model. And we are hearing that the information that we got at the town hall meetings didn't really feed into the strategic model. Is that what we hear?
No. To you, Chief Administrator and Madam Chair, we are not hearing that. We are hearing that what happened at the town meeting informed the people's mandate, from which mandate letters were issued. We built out a development pathway to making Tobago the greatest little island on the planet. There are 12 development goals. There are 21 focal areas for priority activities. And we are deploying, because of our resource constraint, our limited resource that is being appropriated to the Tobago Assembly, we are deploying the strategic selectivity model to order our priorities in terms of our programs and projects. That's the conversation.
Could you share with us what are the 12?
Chief Administrator.
What is it? What's the terminology? What's the phrase you used again? 12? Yeah, could you share with us what the 12 goals are?
I'll have to pull. Yes.
There's 12 development goals, right?
Yes, we have 12 development goals.
Right, and 21 strategic focus criteria. I guess you could give us the 21 strategic in writing, Madam Chair?
Yeah, we can give you those in writing.
Yeah. No, if we get it.
Yeah, I think we need them now.
Yeah, if we could get them now so that we know where we're going. So at least the
12 goals are: 1, a per capita income and standard of living that surpass those of other small island states. 2, a highly educated and innovative population. 3, a technologically driven, innovative, productive, resilient, and competitive economy. 4, an efficient, effective, and accountable public service. 5, a modern, scientific, and efficient healthcare sector, constitutional autonomy within the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, every Tobagonian having the opportunity for self-actualization, protection and caring for the most vulnerable, a population that is united, peaceful, safe, and secured. A green and modern state-of-the-art public infrastructure, and finally, an open, transparent, accountable, and inclusive government or governance.
So could you share with us, Madam Chair, what was the rationale why those 12 things were left out of this? Because it appears that it would have informed us better going forward in this inquiry. And just to follow up on that, are we saying that that is what the greatest little island on the planet would look like? What is that going to look like, and when would we know? How would we know when we get there to be the greatest little island on the planet?
The development pathway, the objectives and the measurable outcomes will tell us when we get there. That is what the development pathway is designed to do.
And we got this information. You're saying that this was built out from the conversations that we had with the public, right?
The conversation we had with the public that informed the people's mandate.
Okay.
Madam Chair, in terms
Yes,
of...
Yes, Madam Chief Administrator.
In terms of the details, we could submit that in writing subsequently.
Which details are you offering?
The details, according to the question posed by Senator Hislop about the developmental pillars and all of, towards Tobago becoming the greatest little island, the 21.
Yeah, well, I really want to ask if this occurred after the submission.
Yeah.
You see, because in the submission, these terms are placed there. I think that's the best terminology I could put, right? And in the submission, it also appears that it's a work in progress. It's still being developed. There's no sort of indication at all to develop what these things are. So even getting it after really makes us somewhat handicapped in the current conversation. I mean, you talk about your development plan towards the greatest little island on the planet, strategic development pathway for Tobago 2025, is still being developed. That's what you tell us on page 32, right? Nowhere are the 12 development goals or the 21 strategic, I want to say objectives, but that's not correct. Yes, 21 strategic focus criteria or priority areas. None of those things are mentioned in anywhere of this 100 and something page document. So we are really somewhat constrained, and particularly to be hearing about it now at this stage as if it is a fait accompli. And I guess that's why we are having a great challenge in grasping a lot of what Mr. Richards is trying to share with us. So, my question is, why nowhere at all? Because you're first talking about your SSM, just for Mr. Richards to be in the same conversation with me, your strategic selectivity model, right? That comes out in response to a question about what mechanisms have been implemented by the THA to determine whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically. And, this strategic selective model, SSM, is thrown in there, but without any kind of explanation, clarity.
Or reference point.
So this is why we're having a bit of challenge. So, yes, I accept the offer for all of that to come after, but certainly, Madam Chief Administrator, I understand, I hope you appreciate the kind of disadvantage that we are put at in carrying on that very fruitful or productive conversation that you promised. Okay, so let's see how we proceed from here.
So, Madam Chair, is that we're going to receive the document at a later date, the 21, that's a commitment?
Indeed, it is a commitment to submit it in short order.
Okay, thanks.
We certainly give you a date and time to submit it along with whatever other questions we may have, Madam Chief Administrator. Okay, so I think maybe we could leave the SSM and the development plan until we get that, and maybe the other questions will come out of that. Yes, please, Member Hissa.
If just for clarity, how do we now determine what projects are priority? If we're not yet using, are we using the SSM? Is that what we said? Are we using it currently? So we are using an incomplete process. Is that what we said?
If I may respond, the SSM is a tool that is used within the broader framework. So in terms of prioritizing our based on our limited resources, that's a means of selecting. So yesterday, we had a meeting, the technical staff with the Executive Council. We met after the budget, and in view of the limited resources, we sought to prioritize the projects. And I'm noting that Administrator Murray, who sits in my chair when I'm out of country and on vacation, he's anxious to contribute to the conversation.
That looked like it was taken by surprise, Member Murray.
Thank you.
Okay, but just now, when you do that, could you tell us, therefore, what the mandate letters are, when they were issued? If you could bring all of that in the conversation, because I expect that resides with you, and what projects have been identified as part of your strategic objective from that meeting yesterday.
All right, thank you very much, and for the opportunity to respond. I think just to go a little further, because it is obviously not pellucid as to the strategic selectivity model and what the THE is aiming to do. And the THE realized that for many years it has failed because simply with a slate of over 200 development projects, it was impossible to almost deliver, and to deliver in a satisfactory manner that people will be happy that something has been done with the monies that has been allocated to the Tobago House of Assembly. And so it became somewhat more or less of an urgent need to deal with that those slates of projects, to reprioritize. And as much as the strategic selectivity model is being used and being brandished about, it is really an aim and a focus to reprioritize, and normally which is what any ministry of government would do, to reprioritize the projects that we have. And using first of all, before, and so the town hall meetings would have been held, folks came out, and as we said, we thought that it would have been more perhaps of a technical sort of engagement that became more or less something that developed more into a political slant. But what it did reveal is that the people had needs, and people felt that the aspirations and stuff were not being met, and that was now fleshed out into those developmental goals, those goals and the pillars that we have. From there, the mandate letters, which now became the policy directive for the administration, were issued sometime around, I think, about June of last year. And so it was a directive to each division as to specific deliverables where that was concerned. At the same time, the strategic selectivity model was adopted and was started to be fleshed out and built up. And if I could share in my perspective, what it is really saying, it is really determining a model of going forward where, first of all, there is accountability to the greater public. You went to them, you spoke to them, and you therefore said, we will deliver certain things to you. And so what is to be fleshed out and to be put up on the site is part of, first of all, public accountability, so that people can look and can see these are what we have said and what is being fleshed out. And it's not only just an ability to accountability, but it's an opportunity as well to measure performance. And therefore what it is really a performance management tool, a performance management structure that really gives a commitment for results to the people. And we have said, these are what you have said and these are what we have proposed as deliverables. It gives an opportunity for feedback. And so that there is a constant stakeholder engagement as to when you have put up your KPIs, your deliverables, and you have said, this is what we want to do, people can respond back and say, perhaps that's not what we are looking for. So there is always the engagement, the stakeholder engagement in a robust and comprehensive manner. So you're ensuring that it is going to be in alignment with the needs and the expectations of the public are. And so that simply is what the model is aiming to do. It is no different in my regard from a lot of performance management models. It's just perhaps a different approach along the developmental path. But what it simply does is identify your performance indicators. You're saying this is a commitment for results. Persons can have an input, persons can see what is going to take place, and they can continually, in a very fluid and dynamic manner, allow you to shape what is going to be, however, you're expected. And I would believe that perhaps in the next fiscal year, before projects are implemented, people have an opportunity so that they can contribute, Senator Hislop, so that your projects are finalized. What we have found out is that too many of our projects are not addressing the needs, so that the selectivity model speaks to what in many ministries are the same things that occur when we go through the call circular, that your projects are filled and continue to be shaped by the socioeconomic impact, the factors that one expects that projects are supposed to be able to deliver on, how it's going to impact the economy, how it's going to relieve the needs of persons in the society, the social impact, the sustainability of the projects that you are going to undertake, the risks that are associated so that we know upfront and we can plan, we can manage and mitigate the risk so that in effect, projects are going to be sustainable. And to look at the feasibility overall of the projects, because one of the failings that we have had and with implementation is that many of the projects that we have had on our books for years have not really been properly conceptualized and developed. And implementation continues to be a problem simply because you have to admit that if you had done it before in the way that it needs to be done, then you would have had better projects, that you would have had deliverables that you can boast of, and that you can see the sort of economic development that you are aiming for. And so the mandate letters would have been given out to each division, just coming back on track with the question. And each division will be given deliverables. And I can say, for example, at my division, which is the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries, and Urban Development, the mandate letter speaks to, first of all, the relationship that we should have with the stakeholders that are involved in the industry and in the sector. It spoke a lot towards, in my regard, my division's regard, how we are going to build out and develop urban centers in Tobago. Areas, for example, of like expanding the urban areas of Scarborough, Canaan, Roxborough, and I think Mason Hall has been added. How are we going to derive and develop projects that are going to allow for the infrastructural improvement and development that is expected in these areas, and in terms of supporting anticipated business activities and growth in the economy? If we are going to do that, we have been asked to build out, together with the Division of Settlements, for example, a Tobago Urban and Rural Development Housing Authority, where we can both synergize and develop and further expand some of these, not only business centers, but also create the need for housing and continue to develop, especially rural Northeast Tobago. We have been tasked with, since quarries fall under my division as well, we have been asked to continue to further give support to and develop the Study Park Enterprises Limited, which is the quarry, into developing it into a more comprehensive type operation that is one day that we can see no more subventions for you, and so that they can stand on their own and they can develop a more comprehensive product line, and that can meet beyond the needs and even bring more income to Tobago. And so several initiatives and deliverables were given out, but then you look at it and you realize some of them are broad policy directives, some of them are specific deliverables, but then you have to take that now and transform that into projects And that is where the selectivity models are going to allow you and to help you ensure that shape what you are going to be doing. First of all, it helps us to reprioritize and allows us to those projects that we are doing now determine which ones we are not going to continue with. And the new ones, these are going to be shaped based on the expectations of the mandate letter.
So thank you very much. I think Member Dinoberger wants to ask a question.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ms. Murray, thank you for that very in-depth explanation. From my own understanding, from the reading, from what you all have said, I understand the rationale for the strategic selectivity model. In dealing with this and saying that it allows you to prioritize, not seeing the actual model itself, I don't know if I'm correct in my assumption that you have all of these projects that would have been derived from a process. Those projects are then prioritized, and that prioritization reflects what, like a score for the project. So the project is rated as a 1 or a 2 or a 3, or it has a score between 1 and 10 or something like that. So that, if that is correct, what I would like to get an understanding of, whether it is now or in writing afterwards, is what are the criteria, and Chief Administrator, you did, I believe, speak to it a little earlier. Right? I don't know if those were all, but the criteria, and then how those criteria are weighted in terms of the final number assigned, let's say, or the score that project gets. Yeah, so I would like to get that as well, right? And it doesn't have to be done now, unless you can, but if we could get it in writing, yeah.
I will provide information in writing so I could provide all the details that are required.
Okay, so if I understand the mandate letters, you said were given June last year, 2023 for each of the divisions. So can I ask if you all could supply those mandate letters? But in addition to which, because you're, as Mr. Richards would say, this is an organic process and so on, these mandate letters hold good for how long? Till 2045? Or it was just really to start you off, and then when you have your electronic system up and running, right? So you have some things that you've started off with. Your electronic system, which allows you to get feedback, to measure where you are at, to measure impact and all of that, would therefore eventually replace this system of mandate letters. If that then will be recalled, retracted, and therefore it is your total model that directs where you go from there in terms of projects.
Yes, you are correct. I believe that these were issued as broad policy directives initially to get divisions, which I think was, as far as the new administration concerned, a statement as to where they wanted to go in terms of macroeconomic policy directives. And then we are expected now that this has been issued and we are now building out the framework, the performance management framework, and the framework in terms of institutional support that will allow these directives to be transformed into specific deliverables in terms of that type of framework.
Okay. And Madam Chief Administrator, maybe this will be my final question on this aspect. In terms of on page 9 of your submission, where you talk about some of your key strategic outcomes and achievements, and you list things like your correspondent register database, and this would be for the Office of the Chief Secretary. Am I correct? Your Tobago Disaster Relief Warehouse and so on. These things would have come out of your mandate letters.
No, the question specifically spoke to a strategic plan. So we were discussing what were the achievements under the previous strategic plan.
Oh, that is the plan that is the plan that expired in 2019.
Yes.
All right. So could you give us then an idea of what under the Office of Chief Secretary your mandate letters would have identified as areas of...
No, I am smiling, Madam Chair, because I had a previous conversation with the Chief Technical Advisor, and I was saying, I don't, where's my mandate letter, where's the mandate letter for the Office of the Chief Secretary? And he said to me that he didn't think it was appropriate for the Chief Technical Advisor to issue a mandate letter to the Chief Secretary. So we are not guided by the mandate letters as the other divisions are.
Okay, so let me ask one question. Save and except for the Office of the Chief Secretary, all the other divisions, that will be what, 8?
Yes. Yeah.
Have mandate letters?
Yes.
So what guides then the Office of the Chief Secretary?
Well, that's, we are guided by the general direction provided by meetings with the Chief Secretary until this pathway is fleshed out so that we can develop our strategic plan. So,
so let me ask something just before you go on. What assures you that your general guidance would align with whatever this plan you're going to get? What assures you that there's going to be harmony?
We are in the planning stages, so we are developing these developmental goals, and which will inform our strategic plan. And we have also set up the performance management unit so that we'll be able to measure. So we are not at a place where we can report specific achievements, right? We are continuing on the path that the previous strategic plan, all the areas that were not achieved under the previous strategic plan, we are trying our best to achieve those, along with whatever we think our priorities will be part of a work plan. So we do not operate on a daily basis based on an ad hoc basis. We have operational plans, yearly operational plans, which are approved by the Chief Administrator and the Chief Secretary, that will guide what we do in a particular year.
Okay, so if I understand well, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, you have a strategic plan that expired in 2019.
Yes, unfortunately.
Right? Under that strategic plan, you have certain, say, projects and so which were identified and which were not completed or even started.
Yes.
Right? You've decided, as the Tobago House of Assembly, to chart, I would call, a new way forward, yes, which will be informed by your plan of making Tobago the greatest island and greatest smallest island on the planet. All right? But yet, for your division, you continue with your 2019 expired plan. I understand that well?
We try to achieve the goals that were set, that we think that is relevant to the Tobago House of Assembly still.
Okay, and therefore I ask, what objectively informs that your attempts to try to see that those are still relevant? What sort of strategic or objective criteria you've used? Because that's the issue. That will be the issue for me, because you're looking at 2025 to 2045. You stop at something that you are determined up to 2019. Now remember, the plan wasn't dated 2019. It expired in 2019, right? So you're looking at something that is at least, do the maths for me,
yes,
right? At least how many years out of date, right?
Yes.
So how do you line up one with the other that is to be, and how are you sure that it's going to be relevant to what is going to be?
Okay, so for those areas that we think are relevant, we continue. And for those, and we have the budget statement that we use as our guide as well. So whatever the administration says to us they want to achieve via the budget statement, that becomes part of our operational plan.
Thank you. Member Bacchus.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. And again, welcome to the session. I had the time to digest the entire submission, and while I've been here, I've been going through it and listening to the line of questioning and responses being provided, particularly as it relates to the relationship between strategic plans, mandate letters, and the model. In your submissions, all of them based on the divisions for which the reporting happens, at the beginning of all of them, there's a statement that addresses the position of the strategic plans, and the recency or none in some cases. Tourism is 2015, infrastructure is 2020, as an example. I'm just using them off there because I went through them. In almost every instance, there is an alignment and an adoption of the, not the model, but the mandate letters, as being almost the replacement of the strategic plan, to address it as it stands. And if I quote from the response from the Division of Tourism, in this case, this is the 2015 one, but maybe not, let me not do that. Let me use something that is more recent. The one from the Division of Infrastructure. It identifies where the strategic plan was initiated in 2020. Then under the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, the plan covered the 2021 to 2024 and was developed under consultancy services from people, etc., etc. Draft plan was produced in 2022. However, the strategic plan was halted. The consultants were disengaged. And currently the division is aligned with the strategic selective model adopted by the administration as its pathway to the development of the island of Tobago. The division is therefore operating in accordance with the mandate letters as issued to all divisions as a key element of this approach. That is the, would I be correct in saying that is the approach that you're doing? So that the strategic plans themselves are systematically being replaced by the mandate letters and therefore being adopted by the model. Is that accurate? And Chair, through you and through Chief Admin, I see Dr. Richards will need to answer. Sorry, I'm just reading it from what it said. Could you clarify and explain it for me, please? If through you, Chief Admin. Doctor. No, he was shaking his head to me. I thought he was going to do. Oh, you won't do it. Sorry, my apologies.
Let me
my
start
apologies.
the conversation then.
Sorry, my apologies.
All right. So we are not without strategic direction. You said before, as you said, we have the mandate letters. We have the budget statement that we are told to use as a guide while they develop the developmental plan for the island towards becoming the greatest little island on the planet. We recently had some training offered by the Ministry of Public Administration on performance management. We have the Management Services Unit along with our Policy Director Performance Management. We are, from the developmental plan, we are going into doing strategic plan for the divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly. So while we are fleshing out that broader developmental plan that will guide our strategic plan, we are using our budget statements, we are using the mandate letters. Administrator, where you want to contribute? I thought for a moment they wanted to add to the conversation.
And in your submission, you also said you were guided by the call circular. Is that still applicable or not?
It is.
It is?
It is. And so the basic preparation and submission of projects will always be in adherence to the call circular. The question that is being posed, I could see perhaps from the perspective of the Division of Infrastructure, that in all intents it would appear that the mandate letters are in fact the replacements of what would have been a strategic plan of a former administration, and therefore this administration has not adopted the tenets of that and the policy direction of that previous draft strategic plan. The mandate letters have been issued. I have only been there for over a year, but my experience is telling me, and what I have seen is that the administration is saying that given the time frame that is there and the fact that resources are limited, they have opted to go specifically into the heart of what we call strategic planning and look at specific areas that they believe is important for the progress of Tobago at the point in time that we find ourselves in with the scarce economic resources available to the island. I have not had an indication as to a replacement of the overall comprehensive strategic planning process, but definitely that this pathway, at least from this modality, is in many ways going to be the defining policy directive of the administration.
Yes, Member Barker.
Thanks. So basically we're saying it's interim. While you work through, it is a means to an end while you get to what, quote unquote, becomes a strategic plan.
Ultimately. Strategic plan.
Yes, and so the reason why I say it is that at the beginning of every one of the individual divisions' submissions, it is clearly spread out because all of the questions started with the strategic plan question. And so while the answers and the dates for which these plans exist, the answers are consistent in that the tourism one is another one. The tourism is therefore in accordance with the mandate letters issued to all divisions as the key element of the model in which you're going to adopt. So basically what you're saying is that this has become an interim place in which you are while you flesh out with your larger developmental model what the strategic plan is going to be. Is that?
Eloquently stated, Senator Barker.
Thank you. Just like to make things clear, it's easy for me. Chair, if I may. Thank you very much. I'm the tech guy in government. I'm the tech guy, and in going through the submissions again, I kind of hone in on those technological changing pieces for what we have. And as you, Administrator Mr. Maria said, this administration is forging a path that is a bit different from what existed previously. One of the things that I recognize that has been somewhat shelved is the intelligent island, as an example, and is being replaced by something else. In going through the submissions, even looking through the allocations, I could only find one instance of an ICT allocation. One, in all that we have. How is ICT development? How is the role of ICT and the things that we have? I mean, I understand we're talking about with the project that is ongoing, but how is all of this being done and developed under these mandates and plans that you have? Just based on what I have here, there doesn't seem to be a specific drive or allocation relative to ICT development or the tenants and components that surround that. How is this being done?
Well, one of the earlier goals that was stated is certainly the intention of the THA to make the island a digital island. And so whether we call it an intelligent island or a digital island, I believe it's the same approach, but perhaps from a different perspective. A lot of the move and the drive towards making Tobago a digital island is being spearheaded by the Office of the Chief Secretary. And we can give you examples. And so the THA has accepted and has decided to partner with the Ministry of Public Administration in its recent attempts to upgrade its IRIS, its PeopleSoft software, so that in terms of our HR management, and while to Trinidad to a certain extent, over the years would have been advancing towards a digital nation. The THA more or less has been more or less subsumed under a paper-driven and a continually overburdensome paper-driven type operations. The Chief Secretary mandated that the island move and keep up or even try to surpass its sister counterpart in the drive towards a digital nation. And so even as I remember, and I believe you were there, when we had that meeting, I think it was in 2022, with the Prime Minister and with the Cabinet, and the Chief Secretary was very keen on doing the same thing as Parliament in moving towards the digitization. And much of that, I think, and perhaps maybe with your assistant, has occurred. So the Executive Council now operates in that similar regard in terms of less paper. All the Executive Council notes and stuff are now sent to the Assembly digitally. The THA would have also looked at our procurement methods as well to see how we can digitize that. And sometime ago, we would have, not very long ago, we would have entered into an arrangement with B-Mobile TSTT. So we are now in the e-tender and we have subscribed, and so we are moving assiduously. And so we are taking it step by step, bearing in mind that if we look, and we are talking today about specifics, if we look at the monies that have been allocated to the THA under institutional strengthening and the ICT, we see the paucity there. And so that it is not without for want of wanting to, but then again, it's moving within the scope of what you have been allocated. The real challenge will be as to, and I keep on saying that, and I came from a technical background, so if I say not ICT, the challenge though is that there are many things as we move towards a digital nation that can be done in a broad stroke, access to services. But I think the real challenge is going to be how technocrats digitize their work efforts. Where what I do, for example, I was in a division of agriculture. How do I take the technical parts of it and move toward digitizing, right? Because there is no sort of, there may very be little similarity with another. We can talk about digitizing our payrolls and our HR functions from a strategic level, and that is important and that will work well. But the true effort has to come, and I think that is something that divisions will have to, in many ways, forge their own path as they seek to include ICT as development projects. For example, until IRIS IFMIS is missing more than ever. And so what we have attempted to do, for example, in my division is, and we are rolling it out right now, is to implement what we call an OVIS, which is an online vote information system. Because all our informations, we still have to rely on a lot of statements that are physical. Vote information is still in vote books, physical vote books and stuff like that. So we are trying to move. So it is not that without want of effort on the part of the THA, but it has quite a bit of catching up to do. But it remains resilient that we are also going to become a digital island.
Chair, again, if I may, through you. Yes, and I saw that, the digital vote. Now, that represented the single instance that I was referring to in terms of the ICT allocation in where you are. There are other key and significant components, and even in listening to the 12, and without meaning to get too granular into it, there are issues of security, issues of communications, there are a number of issues that are embodied inside of it that have to be funded and achieved. Let me not use the word funded, let me use the word achieved, if you want to get to the point at which you have to get to. The noble endeavor of the website, on which you place all this information and all, it has to be updated, it has to be kept up to speed, it has to be validated, it has to be protected. And then, of course, the community that you want to participate in it has to be empowered, embodied, emboldened, and, of course, equipped to be able to utilize it for the purpose for which you have. All of those things represent the progress towards that digital embodiment that you're talking about. That requires prioritization and resourcefulness inside of it. And so the reason why Chair was so insistent about that the fact that we needed to have those things in here, that we needed to be able to evaluate, even in your own prioritization, how those things were being addressed within the scheme of the things that you want to accomplish. So we really look forward to getting the information that you have, and I would suggest that you continue to collaborate with a lot of your ICT partners across the globe to be able to push what you have to get to, but you have to prioritize the resource allocations associated with it. And if I may add, just on the back of it, Chair, again through you, not necessarily that you need to adopt it, but this, I think, is proven globally, that if you want to achieve the type of transformation that you have to have, there are 4 pillars that you must address. And they must be embodied somewhere, I suggest, within those goals that you have and the 21 initiatives. And that would be to address these 4 pillars as they relate to the people that you're trying to deal with, the processes for which those things are going to be working and embodied, the technology, which is always the simplest part of what it is, because we could buy that or build it anyway. And last but not least, the legislative components that have to be addressed for you to be successful in what you're doing. And that would include regulations, et cetera, et cetera. That would be my thing. Through you, Chair, is what I would add to what you have to do.
Member Hislop wishes to intervene in the conversation at this stage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We here this afternoon treating with according to the document before us, the examination into the expenditure and development program of certain key divisions. And whilst we had the administrator for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, I want to zero in on a couple money issues, money projects that, based on your submission, are still ongoing. And so what I'm seeking to do, Madam Chair, is to get some clarity on the status of the projects, as to why they're still outstanding, based on the fact that we had a contract start maybe in 2022, 2023, and so on. And so the projects that I want to zero in on is the Lamy Road project in Argyle. Based on what you have, just bear with me a bit, I'm just trying to pull it up here. Construction of bypass from Lamy Road, and this would go into Roxborough. You have a start date or award date of the 23rd of September 2022. The contract started on the 12th of October 2022. And it says that it is still ongoing. Could you give us a status report on that project as to why it is still outstanding? Because I believe, based on the information that we had prior, the project was supposed to be completed already, as well as the project for Chauvin bypass. That was, yeah. We also want to get a status report on that, as well as the Milford Road bypass project.
So if we could start with the Lamy Road that falls under the Office of the Chief Secretary.
No, well, this submission came to us. So okay, I saw that as well. That's the Lamy Road Agricultural Development Project. Okay. And Chief, if you want, you could speak to that, and then Administrator Murray can speak to the Lamy Road bypass project.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the Lamy Road Development Project, what's the status of that? How soon do we expect that project to be delivered?
All right, so we have the Director of Land Management with us, and she will give you all the details of you will go with your, okay. No, that's not good. Okay. Okay, I thought it was the farmland project. Okay, go ahead.
So we're just making clear, because apparently Lamy Road seems to be starring a lot.
Yeah, yeah, because we have the agricultural development project, where they would.
But you're interested in the road, the connector
yeah,
road.
Well, I also wanted to touch on that, so we could touch on both of them.
All right, so I will go first
Right.
because it's just one project, and the director, land management, she will treat with that.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone. The Lamy Road project under the Farmland Development Program, this began in 2023, and it's an 18-month project with a contractor, Owen Smith Construction Limited. Currently, it is status for to end in December this year. So it is, I can see.
My apologies, Director. We're trying to get the external noise sorted out, so I didn't hear what you were sharing with us. Yeah. So yeah, you could go ahead.
Okay. Yes, so I was saying that the Lamy Road project under the Farmland Development Program is an 18-month project which began in early 2023. It is to be completed in December this year, 2024. So with that project, as it stands, you could see 80% completed based on all the approvals that we needed to comply with. We are looking to give over 60 farmers within the area that infrastructural need in terms of utilities, electricity. We try to be very innovative in that area. It's a start project that we want to build out eventually. So we are looking at solar-powered lighting. In terms of the utilities of water, yes, WASA would be included, but we are looking to even have a well in the area so that they can have that backup plan, as the farmers have complained that not all the time they would have that support from WASA. As we know, sometimes the waters are dry in that time. So the farmers, I believe there will be over 24, 25 plots that would be developed. They would all have their own kiosks in terms of the solar-powered panels for their personal use. It would give the farmers a sense of security in terms of being able to power their plots, as well as they can stay extended hours on the farm and be safe. So yes, that's for the Lamy Road Farmland Development Program.
Whilst I have you, Director, could you also just give us an update on the Belmont? But before you move on to Belmont Farmland Project, you said early 2023?
Started.
Was the start date?
Yes.
And so you're within your time for your 18-month period for completion, and you're also within budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And the plots have already been assigned, right?
Most of them have been assigned, but once the project is complete, we can look at facilitating other farmers in the area as well.
Okay. And the Belmont?
Okay, the Belmont Farmland Project, yes, it began sometime in 2021, I believe. We are looking at 23 plots specific to livestock farming taking place in that area. All those plots were allocated. So we are looking at an area where we'll have small ruminants, rabbit farms, poultry, that kind of development taking place there. In terms of infrastructure, the Division of Food Production was responsible for the road networks in terms of putting in that through their Agriculture Access Project. The Farmland Program, however, puts things in place for utilities in terms of water and T&Tech. However, based on the slowness of which the infrastructure road network taking place, the WASA was delayed, and likewise T&Tech was also delayed at that point in time.
So in terms of the road network is what? Is the road net?
It's almost complete. The last time I visited would have been, I believe, a week ago. I would definitely say it's 90% completed from what I saw.
So the scope hasn't changed in terms of the other infrastructure work that has to be put in?
No, it hasn't changed.
So is it that we put in the road network and then we looking to put in the water, the water services?
WASA and the division should have been working together because WASA has already been paid for providing that service. So we're just waiting on feedback from them as to when they're going to start putting water into that area.
So if I could get some clarity, through you, Chair. Now I'm familiar with the area, and if I'm not mistaken, we are using a concrete road surface, and which is an approved form of road surface. But we've not yet put in the infrastructure for the water. So we've put down concrete on the road surface. So what is the intention in terms of the installation of the water? Is it that we're gonna take up back part of the concrete surface to put down the pipelines? Because as I said, I'm familiar with the area, so I saw that the work is taking place, and that's why I asked if the scope has changed, if we're not putting in the rest of the utilities.
Chair, if I may, I am also familiar with the area, and I also was the acting technical officer of the Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
Right?
Go ahead.
So I could respond, right? And so provisions are made, and we have to take our minds away from the historical aspect of putting down lines below a road. And as far as I know, there is some sort of utility corridor that would be allowed for the pipes to be run, so that even if whatever we were going to use, because I know when I was there, the approach was perhaps asphalting. So whether it is asphalting or concrete in terms of the finished surface, it should not in any way be able to prevent the laying of the lines.
So you can give us...
But the question is really what is intended. What you just gave us, in my view, is theoretical.
Yes. Yes.
I noticed the officer couldn't answer. Okay? And I mean, we could see. Okay? So your answer appears to me to be very theoretical. It still hasn't answered the question. What is intended?
So, Madam Chair, the officer cannot answer because she's from the Department of Land Management. The work is being coordinated by the Access Roads Program under the Division of Agriculture. And as far as I was aware when I was there, I'm not sure if the scope has changed, because we are well aware that that program of work was halted for quite a while, almost 2 years, while there was some auditing of the works that would to be done. But as far as I'm aware, whether it was, as I said, asphalting at perhaps the consideration when I was there or not, the works in terms of the paving works right now, whether it's concrete, should not, as far as I aware, the intended work was not that any asphalting or paving works, any type of work, whether it's concrete, would not interfere with the laying of lines by WASA. We had many on-site meetings with WASA concerning the running of the lines. And so I would not, in my opinion, as far as I remember, unless it has changed, I have not been an employee of the division for more than a year and a half, so I cannot say if it has changed.
So Administrator, you should not put your head on a block to say that, right?
I put my head on a block, but...
No, so what you're saying, that was a consideration?
That was the consideration.
So we can't speak to what is happening now. We can't speak to any specificity with what's happening now.
No.
Okay, so we wait to see if what was considered is what is implemented, that there's a utility corridor. I'm aware that utility corridors can be put in, so utilities can go in after. But I'm just going based on the fact that from site, we are seeing that the road surface is being put in place and other utilities which are required, because if you put in small ruminant farmers into an area, you require water access and electricity. So, but that's another division, so we can't treat it that too much. So if we could touch on the other, to you, Madam Chair, the other projects that we spoke about, the Lamy Road bypass, and the Milford Road bypass and the Chauvin.
Okay, so the Lamy Road was started in 2022. When I came into office in August of last year, the works had stalled. I inquired as to why works had stopped. I had subsequent discussions, and it would appear that the contractor was unable to financially finish the road. And so there were discussions and negotiations took place. There was an amicable agreement as to how we can go forward, and we are expecting that the necessary arrangements will be made, payments will be made, and the road will be expected to be completed in short notice. I am hoping that by the end, at least, because the majority of work that needs to be done on the road right now is just the completion of the asphalting work, because all the appurtenances and stuff have already been put in, the drainage and stuff have been dealt with. As far as I was aware, they were unable to secure the finances to complete the asphalting of the road. And so we have renegotiated the terms and conditions of the contract that will allow them to receive some sort of partial payment, because initially the contract was a design-build contract, and so they would only receive payment, design-build finance, and they will only receive payment at the end of the contract. And so we have renegotiated the terms, and some partial payments will be made that will allow them to effect completion of that roadway. And once that is done, I'm expecting that, or anticipating that at least it should be finished before the first quarter of the next calendar year.
So if just for clarity, Administrator, you had a design-build finance contract.
Yes.
Contractor could not fulfill his duty, that he didn't have the finances to complete the project. What was the renegotiation that took place?
The renegotiation is that we will allow for partial payment where we have been assured and where we have verified that a certain amount of works has been completed. And so that was done.
So that has been done. You've verified that a certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
Could you say, in terms of the total, what's the total cost of the contract for the Lamb Road?
The total cost of that contract, I believe, was in the amount of close to about $25 million.
And how much of that sum was negotiated to be paid to the contractor for the works to continue?
For the works to continue, so we agreed that a 60% that we will pay half of the work for once 60% was completed. And so once that 60% is verified, which we have verified is completed and payment is done, then he will be able to have the necessary cash flow to complete the road. And so the new arrangement is that it will be 50% of the work will be paid for upon 60% completion, and thereafter 25% installments for after the work is completed. I can't remember right now.
So
but
that's 22 million was the contract. 22,997,000.
It's 22 here, but my memory tells me, as far as I know, I think it was more closer to $25 million.
Okay. I'm just going based on what I'm seeing from you,
yes,
right?
based on what you see. But
so, we safe within our ballpark.
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay. So would this contractor be considered for future projects?
Well, I cannot say that because I am, even though I am the accounting officer, based on the procurement process, if the project management office do their due diligence in terms of post-project evaluations and recommendations, then that will be available for consideration in the future.
And the status on the other projects?
Okay, so you asked about the Chauvin
and
the Staubier Road. That road right now as well, that road, the works there is completed. We know right now that there is a matter between the Tobago House of Assembly and the owners of the Killigrew estate, to which the road has taken its route, and therefore the road is perhaps almost 90% complete, perhaps unable to complete simply because the landowner, there's a matter, I can't really say much, the matter is before the court.
Okay.
But at last there was some negotiations taking place for acquisition, so that the road could be completed.
Okay. And the Milford bypass?
The Milford bypass, which one are you referring?
That's, Administrator, that's your division, the Milford bypass, the Milford Road bypass.
That's the Smithfield?
No, that's.
Could you just tell me which number we're talking about?
All right, hold on for me. Pigeon Point, Innovative Roofing Limited.
Innovative Roofing. As far as I'm aware, when I took office, that contractor had abandoned the project for quite a while. Subsequently, both myself and the secretary had discussions with our project management people and so we took the necessary steps under the FIDIC contract arrangements to write and to ask the contractor to give account. Right now, the contractor has made some effort to reinitiate the works, and we're in the process right now of considering our options to be guided legally as how we can look at towards in some way addressing that issue for one, first non-performance, and also not meeting the necessary statutory requirements that they were asked for at the beginning. And so that contract is under review, and we have to look at whether we also have to look at whether we are going to terminate that road before it is completed in terms of its scope, simply because I am not sure why it was scoped to pass through
the mangrove?
The mangroves.
Yeah, you could say that.
Right, which I'm sure we will have quite a bit of challenge with the environmental management authority. So that project right now is in the process of being reevaluated, the project, as to whether that phase of that work will actually be done, and what will in effect happen is that we will in essence create a bypass from what we call that four roads area that goes into Gilpin Trace. So effectively we will now create a bypass that will go up all the way to perhaps Center Street in Canaan, so you're allowed now to bypass that Milford Port area.
Okay. So Administrator, all these projects were negotiated on the design build
finance arrangements. Yes.
And all three projects have run into some sort of difficulty.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Just to back up a little bit on the if the contract for Lamy Road was negotiated on design build finance, and the contractor failed to complete the project because the contractor ran out of money.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying that as a Tobago House of Assembly, or are you saying as a Tobago House of Assembly, I don't want to use the word, well, you said renegotiated, but you are paying to the contractor, the one who could not complete based on the fact that he did not have finances. You renegotiated the contractor to pay a percentage of the contract sum in order for him to complete. Is that good contracting practice?
It will depend on what type of contractual arrangements normally will persist. And so if you have a design build contract arrangement, normally what happens is that the risk, most of the risk is removed from, in our case, the employer, which is the Tobago House of Assembly, and placed on the contractor. And so under the FIDIC arrangements, you are allowed and you can do that. Now, what is the other option? The other option will be terminate the contract, and then the contractor waits, and then you have to now issue, right, and tender, and again evaluate. The contractor has to wait until you complete the works and then determine whether the value of the works that were completed is more or less than, and that will determine what he is supposed to receive. And so we thought that in terms of fair practice, rather than go through all of that, the contractor completed most of the works. In fact, the work is more than what we said, 60%. Most of the work is about, that road is about over 90% complete.
Okay.
The only issue is just really the challenge of the asphalting of the road. Just that finished layer, everything was prepared. And so it would be to me in good common sense. For something over 90%, but you're just paying for 60% just to allow them to mobilize, to finish.
Okay.
I would think that it would be in our best interest to do so, than rather to go through and to cancel and to go back.
So my last question on this segment, in terms of the innovative roofing that abandoned, could you share with the committee what was the reason for the abandonment of the project?
I cannot give a reason. A lot of this happened before, but as far as I know, the contractor, I was told the report showed that the contractor abandoned the site. The contractor started back on the site a few months ago, and we were not aware, and immediately it was drawn to the project management office to have the necessary meetings and engagement, because some of these things based on FIDIC arrangements, you have to be careful how you do things. You just can't, right? It's very technical. In fact, right now we are looking at having some sort of construction consultant guide us in this process. Because you don't want to go and tell someone, this is not parlor we're playing, so you can't go and say, you didn't finish your work, get out. we're not going to pay you. We have to go through the process. And so while we are doing that, we are doing what is required. We are writing, we are stating the necessary clauses, we are asking for responses. To date, you were required to provide the necessary statutory approvals and stuff like that. I can only say from my time in office, when I reviewed it, I realized that things were deficient. I have since asked, we are asking, we are writing, and so we are gathering the information so that if we need to take the necessary steps, we have the necessary course to do so.
Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so Member Morris Julian, thank you for waiting.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, through you to the Chief Administrator, who I know will direct it to the appropriate person. I have a local government background, and THA was an ideal model for those of us from local government backgrounds, mostly because of the money aspect. So I'm very much interested. In your responses, page 55 to 60, you spoke about a loan guarantee program. I'm very interested about that particular program because you stated, and I quote, that, hold on, I like to highlight things. That is from high school background though, right? That you will launch in the loan guarantee program in mid-October 2024. Well, we're in November. Has it been launched? And what businesses will be targeted for that particular program?
Thank you very much. The Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy, they are the ones who treat directly with this matter. I am going to hand to the administrator, who will redirect to the appropriate person on her team.
Thank you, Chief, Chair, Member. So essentially, the loan guarantee program will be providing support to a lot of businesses who would have had some challenges coming out of COVID. We have the minimum guarantee for $750,000 up to $3 million. We have not started. We are in November. We did have some challenges, some delays. I would have met with the consultant 2 Fridays ago. So the banks, well, not the banks, we have a few banks. They are aware of the program. They're ready to go. They have applications. We have to set up in my office, right? I have to identify an appropriate person. So we met 2 Fridays ago. I have committed to finalize that undertaking by the end of December. So there would be some delays. Maybe next quarter is when we would actually get started.
One follow-up question, Madam Chair, through you. So there was a sum that was already spent. What was it spent on since the program has not been officially launched?
Chair, through you. So we have a consultant who is assisting us with the proper build out and the administration, because it is the intention for the financial institution to administer for the first year, and thereafter it will be administered under the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy. So we have those fees. We also have a working committee that is working along with the consultant, as well as legal fees. So that is the total of $208,812.
Okay, so the balance of funds allocated, it wasn't spent, it was spent, yes, no?
No, for the last financial year, that would have gone into the unspent balances.
Okay, thank you. And again, being from local government is never a good thing when something goes back on unspent balances, right? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Dinobraga, you still have a question?
Chair, it was just a follow-up, if you don't mind, on something that Administrator Murray would have raised. So the inquiry is focused on basically how or what mechanisms are in place by the THA to determine whether its policies are carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, right? And when we say carried out, for me, that refers really to projects and programs, incentives, those sorts of things. In order to do that, you have to have not just processes in place, but you have to have people in place. And those people really should be in place to monitor your projects, evaluate what is going on site, report back and then implement any sort of mitigating factors if there are issues, right? So I was a little concerned where I don't know the details of the project itself, but a little concerned when it was raised that you had a contractor who I will say effectively abandoned, because I don't know, but then remobilized without the THA being aware of it. So I'm wondering what is the role and function of the THA in terms of project management for the projects? Who's responsible for that? Is there a specific division under which project management sits, or is it dependent on the division? And then what is your resourcing like in terms of your project management to be able to report, to monitor, to evaluate? And unfortunately, there's one more on top of that. What is the reporting function like? I know it's a lot, Administrator.
So the divisions handle their projects on an individual divisions basis. I take note to the question that was asked even in the request for submissions of the THA and the role of the Division of Infrastructure. And the Division of Infrastructure does not play a role in selecting nor prioritizing infrastructural projects by divisions other than for itself. And so each division has its own role in managing and its projects. Now, the division of, with this new administration, the division adopted and dissolved what was formerly the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit. And it has been replaced, and based on the submissions you'll see, it has been replaced by what is called a Project Management Office. Now, the concept of a project management office is one of those modern modalities that have been accepted by a lot of successful organizations throughout the world in terms of monitoring projects. I particularly like the approach because what you have compared to many ministries, even in Trinidad and Tobago, is that you have the person who is planning the project somewhere else, somebody who is implementing the project somewhere else, and then monitoring and evaluation is somewhere else. The modality of the project management office brings all of that together in one place. And so from project pre-planning, initiation, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, everything has been done there. And so the division has sought to do so and has started on unit through the approval of the Executive Council. A structure was set up and we have it staffed by a director, a master scheduler, a quantity surveyor, several project managers, and soon to incorporate other aspects as GIS specialists. For every project that the THA, or the division, engages in, a project manager is assigned, right? A project manager is assigned. The reporting and accountability responsibility is that the project manager is expected to have weekly site meetings, quarterly meetings, is to ensure and takes the role and responsibility on the FIDIC to write the contractor if there's any default, if there's any deficiencies, to write. So based on the FIDIC arrangement, whoever you assign as the person representative of the division, the project manager is the one who does all the writing. When these weekly and monthly reports are done, they are submitted through the project management office to the administrator. So it has the oversight of the PMO. In the case and in the scenario of that particular instance, if we know where that road was, so what happened is that it started back because the contractor, it's a kind of distant location, and we just heard from some persons that the contractor started grubbing, removing vegetation. So immediately the project manager would have visited, and there's where the exchange of correspondences took place as to the reasons for and stuff like that based on FIDIC. And we have to keep emphasizing, we have to be so careful, right? Because obviously we just can't go and say we terminate. But the division has adopted, I think, a rugged structure in terms of its project management oversight of its projects. And so what has been happening is that many of our, in times past, our engineers were the ones who were project managing. So you basically had engineers and other persons who has, with their own acumen, obviously, had the deficiency of project management skills. And so what happens now is that the project management office takes complete responsibility for project initiation, contract management, and in that, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, monitoring, reporting, and so that aspect is completely controlled with support from the engineering section in terms of reviews of engineering designs, review of aspects of the work. So key to the oversight on behalf of the division are two persons: the project manager assigned from the project management office and an engineer from the engineering design support unit, or core. And so they are the two persons who continuously monitor and provide updates as to the design, because one would appreciate when you have a design-build interface, in many instances, not many, but once it's design-build, it's not our design. And so therefore we have to ensure that design meets both national and international standards, and approvals, statutory approvals and stuff are done. So the oversight, I believe it's there, and there are several layers of oversight extending beyond the PMO into the office of the administrator, procurement in terms of, and from the legal aspect, and then we have now under the procurement legislation, we have the PDAC committee that oversees in terms of how we select projects. Some of these projects would have been, admittedly, in my opinion, and which came out as one of the deficiencies we have in terms of sometimes onboarding people who can provide that requisite skill that you lack among your staff. And that is one of the lessons that we have learned, especially when you're talking about design build, and we are quick to grab design build finance, because many times what is required is outside of your capacity. But you have to be careful, because if it's outside of your capacity, if you do not have the requisite expertise to support, as we see locally, world could pull over your eye. And so one of the things we have learned is that we need to pay a little more detail to contract management. We need to pay more details to feasibility assessments and having experts there. If we had have done that, then we would have determined, Senator Hislop, that passing a road through a swamp, while technically feasible, may not be practicable, right? Given the environmental considerations. And so we take that in that regard.
So just as a follow-up, every project that you have has a project manager, but a project manager may have multiple projects.
Yes.
And are those project managers part of your establishment, or are these people brought on, is the manager brought on via contract that is actually project specific or projects specific?
Okay, and so the PMO is staffed by a permanent contract staff, right? So they're not brought on per project, but they are housed under the project management office. And so they assign special projects. One of the things that, and speaking to Senator Backus, that we have attempted to do a lot with that type of project management approach is to use as much as possible a lot of technology, innovation, and software. And so the division has spent the time and effort and funds to invest in Plan 5 Microsoft so that we can manage multiple projects at the same time, which is a deficiency that many other organizations and perhaps ministries where, sometimes you have multiple projects and you're managing them one by one using. So we have invested in quite a bit of software that our master schedulers, our project officers are quite adept at using so that we can manage multiple projects, allowing for efficiency of resource and for allocation of resources.
And in general, you see the benefit of this approach in terms of the efficiency of your projects, your timeliness of the projects, and of course how you manage not just the money, but ensuring that your your contractors are being paid on time and these sorts of things?
Excellent, because all of that is done in terms of in a digital environment. And so all of that is done through, for example, real-time tracking, all of that is being done, cost variance analyses, all of these are being done via software, payment certificates, milestones, rescheduling tasks and responsibilities. All of that is being done efficiently. The little challenge that you have is the project management office is just a project planning and monitoring team. They don't implement. And sometimes when you introduce something new and novel like this, you have to get the other arms, because the project management office role is to design projects and how the new structure of the division has been set up. They design projects and then it's now passed on to either internal client, passed on to an internal implementer, which is what we call a development program that is done internally, or it is subcontracted, the larger ones are subcontracted externally to contractors. And sometimes what you're trying to get most times is a deficiency of information, so that when project managers go out and they're trying to capture that type of data and capture information, you sometimes have a reluctance because people are not acquainted fully with the approach, and then many persons, unfortunately in this age, still want to think that is about just keeping things in their head, right? And so that's one of the challenges, getting in terms of that change management, organizational change, getting persons to accept that approach. And that is where we are trying to do the teething. So we have had now a special committee that has been assigned now with the Director of Project Management, the technical officer who is in charge of the maintenance and technical areas, the manager of the engineering design unit, and all these persons, the person who is in charge of development program, they are now mandated to meet and see how they can work and synergize and report as to their progress and how the whole model is supposed to fit together.
Chairman, just one last one. Tying all this back now to your DP, right? In reviewing this, Senator Bacchus, Member Bacchus and I were discussing, your DP is very, very infrastructure heavy. Yes. Yeah? And I suppose that is fine. Well, not that it's fine, because it will then eliminate my question. It is very infrastructure heavy, and that may work out for the project management office because there's a specific resource that you will have that's very same. Yeah? But in terms of projects, programs, incentives, those things that would fall under outside of THA, that's in a ministry, right? So I'm trying to understand it, right? Things that are about human development, cultural development, social development, yes, those things. One, I don't see these here, so I'm wondering if they're picked up somewhere else within the THA. And two, those will also be project-based. Mm-hmm. So how do you then manage those things in such a way that it then you're able to monitor, evaluate, implement mitigating factors, but then also tying back to what we talked about in terms of the website and your SSM, then report to the public saying these things are being done and this is where we are. How does that all tie in terms of your operations?
All right, so allow me to tie that in. So first of all, the division is infrastructure, so it will always be infrastructure heavy. The other aspects of the softer side of it are handled by different divisions. So we have the division of community development, and they will do most of the social programming. So it is unlikely that we will be engaging in social programming, the softer side of it, because our mandate is really on the infrastructural aspects of it. But what you say is pertinent from the perspective that the THA has realized that it needs to strengthen. Yes, the THA has though realized that it needs to strengthen in many divisions what is called either the M&E or in some instances what some divisions call a project implementation unit, and needs to strengthen the aspects of many of these units within the divisions, not only to effectively manage projects, but we will have to look now in terms of that feedback mechanism into the SSM, because data somebody has to be managing the system in terms of relaying the information, and I'm expecting that synchronously with this type of effort, the SSM, that the THA is also going to have to look at realigning in terms of human resources to ensure that monitoring evaluation units, if they still want to call them that, I mean, I like the PMO model, right? The monitoring evaluation units do have the necessary type of, one, the people, the process, right? The technology, and the legislation to support the effort.
The next person I'll take is Member Webster Ray.
Questions for tourism, but before I get to tourism, I want to clear up something with Lamy Road. You noted that some of the plots were already allocated, and you have some still to be allocated. What's the process in terms of allocation? How do you sensitize the public that we actually have available plots and the application process? Just so the people of Tobago could understand, and those who are interested will be able to apply.
Sure. There is an application process by the form of an application form for agriculture under the Land Management Department. Once these forms are submitted, and these forms are also reviewed by a state land committee set up by the Office of the Chief Secretary themselves, these forms will be reviewed. So the form has its standards in terms of what needs to be supplied with the form. For farming, you need to supply your ID information, your proof of address. Also, in terms of your agricultural activity, if you can show proof that you have studied, or if not, if you have not studied, you show proof of some type of agricultural activity being done, whether it be in the form of a business proposal, you can submit that, and all those documents will be reviewed by the State Land Committee.
The application is available online for persons, or you have to come into the Land Management Office?
They are not currently available online. However, they can call, supply an email address, and it can be emailed to them.
Plot the number and the email address.
You can call 639-5375 or 639-3421, extension 6001.
Thank you very much. Now to tourism. Right, so we know the orange economy is becoming very important to Tobago and Tobagonians, and I want to commend us, all of us Tobagoans, for a successful Carnival just passed, right? I know the THA would have been doing a number of studies to see how the various festivals, etc., are impacting the Tobago economy. Could you just give us an update on where we are with the various studies? So far, would the results indicate that our festivals and our projects and programs coming out of the Division of Tourism, that they are positively impacting the Tobago economy? And then I want to ask another question about the people part of it, because as Mr. Maurice said, people, very important in the process as well.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Administrator Skeet is eager to respond. And we have other members of staff from the division here, including Dr. Charleston Thomas, who may be able to contribute in responding.
Thank you very much, Chief, Madam Chair, through you. For us, as you indicated quite clearly within the division, critical at that in terms of the research element, a number of areas currently, as would have been highlighted by us, are under research. I know focus was placed on what is obviously the more popular one at the moment, being the Tobago Carnival, and what would have been that tracer study identifying over the last 3-year period to the kind of growth that we're able to experience on the island, particularly looking at things that spoke to visitor arrival, increased sponsorship, and looking at strategies for even reducing further what is that input on the part of the Tobago House of Assembly. But at this point, I would allow my technical advisor in that area to be able to just elaborate a little bit more as it relates to the areas of studies and the progress to date.
Thank you, Admin. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Admin. Good afternoon again, everybody. Thanks for your question, Minister. All right. One of the failings of the, I suppose, of governance in our country is really research, I think, lack of research. I came in as technical advisor 2 years ago, particularly with the portfolio to undertake a number of research areas that will give the division a better sense of itself in terms of where it is with festivals and where people are at with these festivals. All right. So I can give you an update on each of the research areas that are submitted, including a brief summary of the objectives and all that, right? And I will zone in on the Carnival festival in particular. And heritage, right, good. Right. So the first listed or submitted research is contemporary value and economic viability of the Tobago Heritage Festival. Right. That was begun when I came in as technical advisor, which was in 2023, February in particular. All right. The leads for that are myself and the other technical advisor in the division, who is not with us currently. We have at least 3 objectives. I'll mention 2, right? To reevaluate the cultural value of the Tobago Heritage Festival to Tobago and to evaluate the economic viability of the Heritage Festival to Tobago. We've been using mixed methods as our methodological approach, all right? So we've so far I myself have conducted interviews with some of the guardians of the Heritage Festival on the island. So there was a symposium, elder symposium in March of 2023 when I came in, right? To really get a sense of, from the elders, where we are at with the Heritage Festival, all right? Participant observation of the actual festivals, that has been ongoing between last year and this year. Now, one of the things we've been noticing with participant observation in particular is while you have a lot of excitement in the villages for an activity that we have as a festival, one of the aspects of the festival, you tend not to see that translated in the crowds. All right. So we still, so the participant observation gives us an opportunity to evaluate what that means, but we're not done as yet. All right. The second, we are also reviewing documents that pertain to the Heritage Festival. All right. The TFCL is the company that executes the festivals on the island, and therefore one of the things that we'll have to look at very critically is the spend for the festival for the last, say, 5 or 10 years. All right. So it's a systematic evaluation of the spend for the festival. Also, if you track the board minutes of the festivals for the same period of the Heritage Festival, same period of time, you get a sense of what the planning process looked like, what the post-mortem process looked like, and therefore what the evaluation process looks like, if there is in fact one. All right? Because this is an ongoing research project, I can't give you hard findings just yet. Preliminary findings, there needs to be a retooling of some sort of the Heritage Festival. Not a retooling of the essence of the festival, but I think there needs to be some conversation about contemporizing how we do the festival in this time. All right. To say more about that will require more observation, more reviews, and of course that can come at a later time. All right. Should I give a synopsis of all the areas, or can I just go to Carnival? Right. Okay. So,
those are the areas I'm specifically interested in.
Good. So let me go then to the Tobago language and tourism. All right. So that's my pet project, right? I'm a linguist. One of the things I shared with the administration when I came in as technical advisor is that the aspect of Tobago's language as a tourism product really hasn't been exploited in the way in which, for example, Jamaica has exploited theirs, right? So we haven't yet heard people saying, I want to come to Tobago because of the language, all right? So the language and tourism research project is in fact a project that I have undertaken with the University of Hong Kong. All right. We've so far been able to, well, it also continues the work that was done by Dr. Winford James and Dr. Valerie Youssef. That's on the languages of Tobago. All right. So this project takes that project a little bit further in terms of also focusing on what we call the verbal gestures of the language. Those are the things that are associated to our language which have no words, like all right? So the business of looking at those aspects of our language is really towards giving the language more prominence as a tourism product. The final, again, findings for that I can't yet give you because the project is still ongoing. I can tell you that there is a paper that's already published by myself that's coming out next year called Hospitable Linguistics, in a collection called Hospitable Linguistics, and this particular discussion about the verbal gestures and Tobago's language in relation to tourism is one of the publications in this book.
Yes, I have just a question to interject, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds good,
Mm-hmm.
but how do we make the average man in Tobago understand this and how it could impact them directly, how it puts money in their pocket? So, for example, the average Jamaican know, yeah, man,
right.
They see that in a script or somewhere, they're making some money. How do we get Tobagoans to buy into this? It's important,
yes.
but break it down so Tobagoans listening could understand. Yeah.
So our division,
can
yes.
make me some
money in my pocket.
Kakada.
Yes, sir.
You
right.
understand?
Okay. I'll be happy to tell you. So part of this research project is based on collaboration with the Division of Education and Research. All right. So once this phase of the project is completed, the next thing that we have to do is have conversations with that division to find out how we then discover a Tobago language awareness program that finds itself in schools and in community in tandem. Yeah? Good. In 2023, there was an error in the submission, so that research, the date for that research should have been 2023. In 2023, an Carnival impact research was conducted. We thought that it was best to do it in the second year, not in the first year, because the first year is very experimental. And the details of that impact research, where are we? Right. Okay, sorry. Okay. The basis of the research was really to determine the impact of the October Carnival on Tobago, on residents, etc. All right. We adopted a UNESCO framework for cultural statistics, and therefore that framework gave us the opportunity to use a 1 to 3 year period in order to assess the impact of the Carnival. So it's not going to sensibly be assessed in 1 year or in the second year or in the third year, but rather as a Now, the KPIs that we use in that impact research were economic metrics, where we analyzed the net and the gross margins to determine the overall financial success of the Tobago Carnival. We also utilize customer metrics, right, which is research that taps into the experiences of people in the actual festival. People metrics, another KPI, which evaluated the local stakeholder responses to the event. We also had process metrics, right, which looked at the whole process of the business of planning the carnival and executing it. And then, of course, event metrics. How has the carnival impacted the island in a very carte blanche way? Those KPIs, in fact, became the measuring tools for the companies, and the company in particular that executes the carnival. So, in fact, this year, these were the KPIs that have been used to measure what needs to be measured in the execution of the carnival. In addition to which, there's a large post-mortem, review exercise, right? I was advised yesterday that when you use post-mortem, it's a dead thing, right? Good. So there's a robust review process in place this year, which I'm overseeing, and I particularly asked for that responsibility because I myself have not been satisfied with what we call post-mortem exercises, right? And therefore, it's very robust. I can offer to submit the framework for the review process for your review as well. And I suspect that once that is done, once we get the final data from the 2024 Carnival, we will be able to actually say with more preciseness what aspects have been really successful and where we have loopholes that we need to still throw some cement into.
For a very comprehensive response. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
I have one question for the administrator, Mr. Skeet. Thank you. In everything, the people factor is very important. I know we have quite a number of employees at the division who are on contract, and a pet peeve for persons over the years would be payment of their gratuities. I want to know if we have been on target in terms of people receiving their gratuities at the division, and if we have any outstanding gratuities to be paid.
All right, thank you very much for the question. Through you, Chair, I'm pleased to report that at the Division of Tourism, that the payment of gratuities is currently up to date. All workers in receipt of their gratuity payments. Further to that, there are just about 47 contract employees that would have received gratuity payments up to September of 2024. And we noted 5 that are awaiting payments, and that is only because it is currently going through the process as it relates to inland revenue and the relevant clearance.
So tourism, for the other divisions represented here, we could boast the same way?
Because of the Chief Secretary.
Because they know the public, the constituents will come and ask for the gratuity, so we want to know.
But I think that question, we could ask that of the Office of the Chief Secretary with respect to gratuities.
The construct of the Tobago House of Assembly, each administrator, being accounting officer, they supervise the contract cadre of staff. So at Office of the Chief Secretary, we have a contract management unit, and they are doing a fantastic job in keeping the gratuity payments up to date. Of course, we have our constraints with respect to the funding, but we try our best to reprioritize to ensure that persons are happy, especially going into the month of December. We'll prioritize that to ensure that persons will get the spend that they need for the holidays.
Yeah.
Well, what creates the backlog is sometimes is as administrators.
Just ask it, same thing, page 22.
All right, so it's moving, it's not static, so I would have signed off. I remember before traveling overseas, I left the office almost midnight trying to sign off some gratuities. So this amount would have gone down significantly. Right? We try to prioritize the gratuity payments.
Right, so do you have any idea of what figures? Because we've seen that you had 19 from 2023 and 28 from 2024.
So when you see like these figures coming across from 2023, might be a lot of persons with extended sick leave and the classification on the leave and that sort of issue.
Right.
So it's not that we don't want to pay, but there might be a little, challenge in the system that allows us not to pay. So I will give you the updated information in writing.
Right. Thanks so much for that explanation, because what was going to come after that is if you had some sort of process of prioritization. So, why you jump from 2023 to 2024 without completing 2023? But your explanation is that in computing those people's gratuities, they themselves may have had issues. Yes, okay, thank you. So you'll send us the latest figures, and I agree, as they're moving figures, you'll give us the figures as of the date of the submission you're going to make.
Yes,
okay, thank you very much. Yes. So just before I take you, member Barkas, we were talking about gratuities. And from what the chief administrator said, every administrator will have the control of their own division, and it'll be different. That's my understanding. Okay, so maybe we could ask that question of the other administrators we have here. So we had Skeet who would give for tourism, the chief who would give for the office of the chief secretary. So therefore we have infrastructure, and then we have trade. Finance, yes.
All right, so as far as I'm aware, we are also on target in terms of payments of gratuities. As I think the submission of this report, we might have just had about 4 or 5 persons outstanding gratuity. And in many instances, sometimes it's because their contract ends around that time, right? Around of the fiscal, so, yeah. And so it's been processed. So we have not had challenges in terms of any backlogs with gratuity payments.
Good. And Ms. Shrim?
Chair, and just before I respond specific to finance, allow me to share from a financial point of view. 2 or 3 years ago, under the office of the Chief Secretary, we would have recognized a delay, fast delays in payment of gratuity. So an actual project unit was set up, working along with divisions, identifying and trying to bring it up to date. On the other hand now, finance would have worked along with divisions. So when the process is complete, you had identify the value of gratuity for which you have waiting to pay. Finance would have released that funding to you. And that is what would have allowed us to clear the backlog, right? And some divisions, if they would have had, I believe, like education, let's say. Education this year, their allocation is $9.5 million on the gratuity payments, but their projection is about 10. It's just less than $1 million, but some other divisions will have a challenge, and we work along with them with reprioritizing to fill that need.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So all that being said, in the division of finance, we will have, and this is current as in projected, I tend to project up to September 2025, I would have 33 persons to pay.
Okay, and based on your system, those people should be taken care of. So what's the waiting time from retirement to, or end of contract to payment of gratuity?
So all things being equal, what we tend to do now, 3 months before the contract ends is when we start. We have the performance appraisal to assess. Then we'd also, in tandem, send forth to BIR to get your letter of indebtedness. And in the interim, we also liaising, well, I'm speaking because I just come from another division, but we would be working along with finance so that as soon as it is ready, you can pay.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to give a timeline, but within 3 months of the contract ending is where we have come.
Yeah, that's the kind of answer I was expecting.
Thank you.
Okay, so we would have covered all the divisions, and therefore, Member Bacchus, thank you so much for giving way. Now is your turn.
Thank you. Just one question to Mr. Thomas as it relates to your previous conversation regarding the linguistics and the work that you're continuing that was started by Dr. James. Is it that the intention is to get to the point where Tobago dialect is recognized as a language?
It's already recognized as a language, actually, yes, but we haven't formally done so. That's the distinction. A Creole is a language, and once it's right, so it's already recognized as a language. What we have not yet done is to formally recognize it.
And all of what you're doing now, you're making steps towards that, or is that going to happen at all? The formality of it.
Well, that's a conversation for national government, actually.
Oh.
Yes, because that what our research is doing is identifying language as a tourism product. So it's specific to the tourism framework. A conversation about whether or not our language, that's the Tobago language, would become formally recognized is a conversation not for the THA necessarily, but for central government.
No, so the accreditation associated, so there's nothing like that?
No.
So the reason why I ask, I mean, having conversations with Dr. James at different times during his research and so on, and identifying the structures of it, what consonants you drop when you do this and all. It's tended to me to lean towards the fact that there would have been some level of recognition at a different level, as opposed to us understanding it as a language.
Right.
But it basically, the formality of it being a language is something that has to be recognized in country.
Correct.
Okay, thanks for that.
Advocates like myself,
No,
right? But yeah, it's a larger.
I get it.
a
Being
larger
from
place.
Tobago, if I speak to Ayana, very few people in here will understand what we say. Trust me. The other thing, and this speaks back to the importance of, and it's a good segue, relative to research, the importance of good data and so on. There are a number of councils that were submitted that we have in the submission that are either in some level of being established or otherwise. I'll give you an example. The Research and Development Council is one of them. There's another council here. This is Research and Development. There were two of them in particular. Research and Development being one, and Productivity, I think, was the other. What is the situation with that? How is that going to lend towards? Because we understand the value of what you've done already as it pertains to the development of the tourism product and Carnival, etc. How are those things going to be incorporated into it, and how is it going to work?
That's for me?
No, that's actually going through the chief administrator
okay,
too.
thank you.
Somebody. It's pertaining to the councils. Yeah.
Chair, Senator Backus, the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy, they are well positioned to respond. So Administrator Trim will respond.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. So, Member Backus, so the Tobago Productivity Council as well as the Research and Development Council would have been on the books for a number of years. We have not progressed with that, to be quite honest. And I think definitely the Productivity Council is something that we would still wish to look at. So while I sit at Finance now, that is something I would action along with the Technical Advisor and the Economic Management Research Unit. We have been having discussions on that. You would note in the submission the composition, the intended composition of the council, as well as the Research and Development Council. That can also, we are looking to revitalize the PRDI under the Office of the Chief Secretary. So that also would come in. We are looking to synergize, and we're not, given the limited resources, we're not looking to duplicate. So that would also be given consideration as to whether or not it should be really subsumed under PRDI and removed off the Division of Finance. But certainly the Productivity Council, and I would also seek to look whether or not it should fall under the Economic and Management Research Unit or stand on its own.
No, thank you for that. I could see the smile on Dr. Hazel and Dr. Richard's face when you go back, especially as you mentioned PRDI and the value of it. It is just so that it is not lost on even the initiatives that you have with the website and the way in which you're going. That those numbers represent the value that is being created as you embark on your projects. And so it's almost like a specific central statistic office for your operation. I think it is a really key endeavor, and it is something that should bear some emphasis, and I'm sure with your undertaking, Administrator, I'm sure it will be done. All right? So just thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask now really about vacancies. And I am guided by what you say, Madam Chief Administrator, about each administrator having control of their division. But I have observed, vacancies in a lot of areas. So, for instance, when I look under the Office of the Chief Secretary, there are vacancies in the Internal Audit Unit. When I look at, I think it's tourism, there are also vacancies, and throughout your Procurement Unit, vacancies. So I'm really asking, with respect to these vacancies, how are these being approached in your various divisions and units? I mean, I could only think that when I look at Office of the Chief Secretary with Procurement and Internal Audit, the sort of vacancies that I'm seeing, those units must be very hamstrung in what they're supposed to achieve, and in your achievement of monitoring, evaluation, risk, and so on. So really, it's to get an idea, and maybe we might have to do it according to divisions. How are these vacancies being treated with? In one of these submissions, when I think it was stated that the filling of civil service positions are done by the Service Commission Department. And when the question was asked, something with respect to type of communication, we get a sort of generic response, active communication, So a question of, if you could give us some detail with respect to how these vacancies are being filled in these key positions.
Right, so thank you, Madam Chair. We have vacancies under the public service cadre. We may have some under the contract establishment, and then the daily paid establishment. The public service establishment is a process involving the Service Commissions Department. What we do from the Office of the Chief Secretary is that we send quarterly recommendations to the Service Commission to fill the vacancies. There are critical vacancies that concern me, especially in the areas like internal audit. Because when we talk about financial management and using the funds to achieve value for money, the important tool from, especially me as Chief Administrator, is to have the internal audit go and check to ensure that things are going according to how they are supposed to. Now, the Service Commission is responsible. What we do as a Tobago House of Assembly, when we find that the weight is a bit onerous, we try to establish a contract equivalent so that we could get the work done. And when the public service position is filled, we bring that to an end. Now, I've noted the Internal Audit Department, they're going through a process of restructuring at the national level that will impact the Tobago House of Assembly. I recently saw an advertisement for the lowest level of internal audit, which is auditing assistant. Now, I was a bit concerned about that because the requirement is 5 O-levels. And the kind of environment now with the technology and the levels of risk, I was hoping that the public service, as promised, would have departed from that traditional mode of 5 O-level maths and English, so that we could really adopt that risk-based approach to audit that requires a level of training and qualifications. In terms of our contract establishment, we fill the vacancies that are critical, again, because of our financial constraints. The daily pay, there's a process in filling the daily paid establishment that takes for us a little longer than we would like. And even now, we're considering what can be an approach from the Office of the Chief Secretary, because we provide a sort of supervisory function to get that done as expeditiously as possible. We have several divisions, the Division of Tourism, and the union is always writing to me as Chief Administrator, clamoring for the permanent list to be done, all of that. So we're working on that. We know that there is a need, and we're working, we're putting strategies in place, see if we could treat with that as quickly as possible. I will give way now, Madam Chair, to the Administrator for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, and then Administrator.
All right, thank you very much. Chair, I just wanted to say, first of all, though, apart from the existence of numerous vacancies, we still have an outstanding issue where there are numerous positions within the THA, the Tobago House of Assembly, that I would want to say cannot be filled, simply because there are positions that have existed and created since 2006 that have not yet been classified by the CPO's office. And that is one of the major encumbrances we have had. And many of these positions are key positions in terms of the structure, in terms of head. So, for example, when I was at the Division of Agriculture, right now the Department of Agriculture does not have a technical head because the position of technical officer is supposed to be abolished. But the replacing position of director has not been classified. And so those are some of the nuances that we face, and I know over the years the DPA has been written to, but as advised, the Service Commission will advise they cannot instruct the CPO, right? And so we have had that with a lot of the positions and certainly some of the positions in terms of higher level management that have not been classified. And that is something I certainly hope that can be addressed in the near future. Many of these positions perhaps now have become almost dormant. And with respect to the division of infrastructure, I think it's perhaps the most critical. We have a permanent establishment of over about 320, and we have vacancies that are critical in almost every level. We do not have an engineer that is a public officer. Apart from the technical officer and maybe one other person, almost every other position is a contracted position. And so it's from way down to from whether you're clerk typist all the way up to our senior positions. Over 90% of many of these positions are technical, and we appealed to the DPA last year when we met, I think between late August, September, that the technical positions, you cannot have a division that is heavily run by technical people where over 90% of those positions are vacant. And so the division is struck right now, and we have had to go the course, as the chief administrator say, of trying to create equivalent contract position. But you cannot do that. You can't create that. We have, for example, right now, at the lowest level, 1 or 2 persons that are just work supervisors, if we have any work supervisor 1. Not even at a work supervisor 1 level, right? And so the vacancies are critical right throughout the division. And it is seriously impacting the division. We have consistently and continuously made recommendations. And there are many instances I've seen now in the THA, for example, where the Service Commission is writing and asking you to make recommendation for appointments. And then you make a recommendation for appointments, and then you hear nothing, and then nothing happens. And in my humble opinion, the word I use right now is that there seems to me there needs to be some sort of consistency from where the Commission is concerned as to how we handle appointments of officers, whether people are to sit and wait for advertisements and interviews and examinations, while you see some people are just appointed without that process. And I think that consistency needs to be there. And needs to be had. And we know, for example, it created quite a fiasco some years ago in the HR field where people had to undergo examinations and stuff like that. But then you're seeing someone who is your equivalent in another area, just got appointed. And so I think that consistency, or for me, that lack of consistency needs to be addressed. As a public officer, you need to be comfortable to know that there is a very clear process from the level of the Service Commission that I understand that if I have to wait my turn, or I know I have to subject myself to examination, that I am not going to go forward unless that is done. But you seem to see getting that kind of mixed signals of who's getting appointed and then who has to wait for an interview. And then there is the challenge of people who could feel now deprived of opportunity. Because one of the things I think is happening, so what priority, and one of the things I think we would like to see is that the Commission treats the Tobago House of Assembly and by division with the same sort of alacrity that it may give to other ministries in Trinidad, in terms of what is happening is that we only receive position when it's critical and it's dire, and you need a position, and then you are required to send something down. But in a systematic way, looking at divisions across the THA one by one and see how you can fill critical vacancies, certainly that's a discussion that needs to be had and a conversation that must take place. But the division of infrastructure, it's dire, if I can use that word, where our technical staff is concerned. and it is not for want of making countless recommendations, requests over the time period that we have been doing so.
Something, Mr. Murray, in terms of the short-term staff, you also have vacancies there too?
Short-term employment, we try not as much as possible to engage short-term employment because of the allocations that we have, and obviously is not something that is tenable. Obviously, beyond the 9-month period, you're constrained, and everybody's getting smarter now. You go beyond the 9 months and they're quiet, and then they come back and say, you owe me gratuity. And so that is something that we have to be careful. So short term is an area that I think the chief, I could agree with you that you don't want to explode. Definitely not.
I think, though, you might have a little misconception with respect to you saying that all children are not being treated equal when you talk about filling of vacancies in Trinidad versus Tobago by the Service Commission. I think we've sat here sufficiently long enough on this end of the table to hear the similar kind of complaints. So I had to correct you on that, so some people don't feel that some children are not equal, all children are equal.
And
okay?
Madam Chair, if I could just add, we have really been building relationships with the Service Commission. They are having meetings with us, quarterly meetings, even in the recruitment of administrators. It was critical. We were able to do that in less than a year. And so all is not lost. We are building the relationships, and we are hoping that it could redound in tremendous benefits to us in the Tobago House of Assembly.
Mr. Murray nearly damaged your relationship. So thanks for that. Thanks for that. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to find out is, I was looking, Chief Administrator, particularly with your procurement. You're not having a procurement manager, you're not having a contract manager, and that sort of thing. I looked at disposal, and you have issues there. And I wonder how you comply with the requirements of the law, because it quickly said, despite all of that shortage in procurement, we're getting things on time. Right? That was done in your submission. So I'm trying to ascertain how you manage with procurement, with the level of vacancies. It would appear that your unit will not be compatible with what the model unit should be for your kind of entity. Okay. How you straddle that?
Well, the Executive Council would have given the responsibility to to recruit procurement staff to the Office of the Chief Secretary, Chief Administrator in our HR contracts unit. So we do all the recruitment, and we assign and reassign. And we understand that procurement is high-risk venture, and we want what is happening now post this submission is that we are recruiting staff. We had interviews for manager, supervisor. We are doing public procurement officer disposal. And we are trying to get the control unit that the contract management personnel are supposed to be up and running by the end of this year. So it's in train. We are recruiting persons, but the challenge in recruiting, because I sat on the panel for the recruitment of the procurement manager, and even though you have a long list of applicants and your short list, we end up interviewing only 2 persons at the end. So we have a real shortage of persons who are qualified, who meets the minimum qualifications. So even as a Tobago House of Assembly, we are talking now, started having a conversation with the Chief Secretary, how we can provide incentive, assistance to persons who are at the lower level in procurement and who wants to qualify themselves to function in the higher level.
With your establishment of your training and development center, is that still on?
Yes, we are working on that. We have established a space for that. It's equivalent to the public service academy. While we're setting that up, I had a conversation with the head of the contracts administration unit telling her that we need to advertise for the head, which is a HR manager to run the unit. So she gave me the commitment that she will do that and get the person onboarded before the end of the year.
Yeah.
We have, but in the absence of that, we are exploiting all the benefits of getting the training provided by the Ministry of Public Administration. Of course, the kind of training that we want, because unfortunately over the years, when we wanted, the teacher wanted to suppress votes, we tried to suppress the training vote, and we are suffering for it now, especially in the areas of the accounting units. So we are trying to, as much as possible, leverage on the training provided by the Ministry of Public Administration. We have built relationship with the Public Service Academy. The director and we had a meeting, and we are trying to flush out some training for administrators, because for these new administrators, they didn't come up through the system. So we decided that we're supposed to do some specialized training for them. So we are working along with the Public Service Academy. We are working along with CARTAC as well. CARTAC is doing some training at the Division of Finance, Trade and Economy on budgeting, and then we go into treasury management, and then auditing. And then in a meeting with CARTAC, we are exploring other areas that they could provide the training in. Right.
Because I'm happy what I'm hearing, because I was going to ask if you saw that if your establishment of your training and development center would help with some of your skills shortages and your capacity shortages. But I understand from what you've said that you've been looking at other avenues in the absence of that. I want to ask you something about training, because I find some interesting things. What's Tobago block training? Page 30. What's that?
Okay, this is the training that is provided by, it is managed by the HR department. At the Office of the Chief Secretary, we have a training unit, and this is the kind of training that they would supervise and run. So what we have is that we have at OCS a training unit that provides training for all of the Tobago House of Assembly, as we may perceive the need based on probably performance appraisal, based on probably strategic direction that Tobago House of Assembly wants to go in, and we realize that we need to train in a particular area. But the divisions themselves, they have training votes, and they will provide training. And we are recognizing now that training isn't working the way it used to. So we are trying to do some coaching and some mentoring and some standard operating procedures, that when people are finished with the training, they could go back and read and say, aha, I missed that thing, I now understand. And we are trying to capture it. We are trying to capture it using the technology, so that you could go and you could look at your video again and see the, follow the trainer while you're actually doing the work. So we're trying to put all of those processes in place.
All right, so anyone else? Member Dinabrika? Sure. Member Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to just jump back to tourism a bit, if you permit me, Chair. I was intrigued by the conversation that the technical advisor was sharing with us in terms of the Tobago languages, in it becoming a formal language, and it would require central government involvement. Is there consideration for any overtures to be made to the central government with relation to it being formalized? I think your mic is off.
Right. Thank you, Senator Hislop. I'm not sure that we're there as yet. I can tell you that my focus with the division has primarily been language as a tourism product. My individual focus as a scholar is another thing, which might be more relevant to the question you're asking, but that's not THA's business, if you ask, if I can say that, right?
Is it possible for both things to work?
Well, certainly. But that conversation about taking the language as at the formal level is really a conversation between or among the Division of Tourism, the Division of Education, as well as with the Ministry of Education, right? So that's why I'm saying it's a larger conversation than simply a THA conversation. THA is one of the advocates, or can be one of the advocates, but the business of talking about whether or not Tobago language should become formal will have to be alongside whether or not Trinidad's language should become formal. So it's not just going to be a conversation that only Tobago can have. That's why I'm saying it's a national conversation.
That's an intellectual conversation we could have off books. But to follow up on the Carnival conversation, what was the external content in the Tobago Carnival? Now, when I say external content, content outside of Tobago, what was the have you worked out the percentage in terms of stakeholders coming from outside of Tobago to contribute to the product that was Tobago Carnival?
Good question. That data is with the different companies. The Tobago Festivals Commission will have some of that data, as well as the TTAL Tobago Tourism Agency Limited. I cannot now speak to that because I have not seen that data. I can tell you.
Well, the administrator, I don't know if the administrator.
I could probably join in to assist
Sure.
my colleague here. What we have at the moment from tourism, obviously, because of the short time frame, is very much preliminary. But I can give you a sense that in looking at visitor arrivals would have peaked over the period, crossing just about 30,000 plus.
If I could jump in, administrator.
Sure.
Sorry to cut you, but I'm not speaking about arrivals. I'm speaking about content. I'm talking about stakeholders coming on island. So let's say, for instance, your music trucks, your mass bands,
right.
that kind of conversation we're speaking to. Because when we talk about the Carnival being a success, we can't just judge the Carnival. And I remember in another time, technical advisor to the assembly shared that festival tourism or festivals was not necessarily an ideal form of economic growth. So I wanted to find out, when we speak to content, how much of the content as it relates to Carnival was indigenous Tobago and how much of it was outside of Tobago. Because you could have a Carnival that is successful but not successful for Tobagonians.
Well,
in terms of income.
Let me probably continue. I know the first part I touched on was visitor arrival, but I'm hoping the latter might help to answer what you're referring to.
Okay.
What we would have also looked at would have been the community impact. So the benefit to Tobagonians by way of bookings, accommodation, and so on increase. We looked at the spend, which would have been the extended benefit, whether or not you are participating in Carnival by way of groceries and other small areas for shopping and so on. Notable increases, and further to that, stakeholder cooperation from the standpoint of the special interest groups and so on. As you might be aware, because it would be public knowledge, a great portion of the spend would have gone towards seeking to give the necessary grants and support to stakeholder groups to be able to have that further level of execution for the Tobago Carnival.
Well, I think we may be safe to wait on the
official
because I think we may be speaking about two different things. But just to stick with tourism a little bit, what is the relationship between the Division of Tourism and TTAL as it relates to Tobago and its marketing of Tobago as a destination?
All right. All right, so the Division of Tourism, as you would be aware, is the line division with responsibility. TTAL is one of those such agencies appointed. According to the mandate that is outlined, part of TTAL speaks to the overseeing and evaluating the health and performance of our tourism industry. Marketing, of course, is one of the key elements from the perspective of research and analysis, and TTAL has that responsibility for the extensive marketing research of key components in terms of the monitoring within the tourism sector. So they share part of that responsibility with the division.
All right, and TTAL seems to be the tip of the spear as it relates to marketing the destination, right? Now, your submission shared with us, the question was asked to provide a breakdown of expenditure of official overseas travel for fiscal 2024. Now, I recognize I am on page 68 into 69. I recognize that after the review of the position of the Tobago House of Assembly, that the administration has taken a decision to curtail a bit of recurrent expenditure, one of them being official overseas travel. Because based on the document that we have in front of us, tourism official overseas travel would have been in excess of over $3 million, well, close to $3 million for fiscal expenditure for 23-24. That's what I'm seeing on page 69.
Page 69. Just pull that page for me. I have one point.
My side, okay, so it is, if I total what we have in front of us, we're going to have 2,837,861, $3 million, right? In your estimation, Administrator, is this based on what we've had, based on our return? Is this value for money return on investment? Is it reasonable? Have we seen from all the engagements we've gone to as TTAL or as the tourism, as Division of Tourism, have we seen an uptick? Have we seen an increase in our arrivals to Tobago?
So I think I would want to answer, through you, Chair, that question probably on a few levels. One, in terms of the determination with regards to overseas travel and so on. As you would be aware, those determinations are made through the Executive Council.
Yeah.
However, what I could indicate, if I were to just probably pull out a few, is that some of the benefits that will be derived from travel and these kinds of investment, obviously in certain instances are more long-term, that you will see the impact in terms of putting the destination out there. I can use one example for, per se, the Caribbean Tourism Organization, Travel, that looks at state of the tourism industry, SOTIC, and the Youth Tourism Congress. We can say definitively over the last period of the 3 years, what this has done is been able to expose Tobago in a manner where we have had the opportunity for one of our young persons to serve as regional tourism minister, going out there as part of this larger contingent and being able to stand up within the Caribbean region and being at the top. And in fact, I think it is safe to say over the last period, my research and my information tells me that Tobago has been able to successfully place in the top 3. Separate from that, being a part of the CTO conference, one of the things that have been recognized is being able to have more of a voice and representation at the regional level compared to assistance before. So that's just in terms of one of the conferences that I'm highlighting. I can also touch on the matter of World Travel Market, which is probably more recent and popular. In fact, what we have seen is an increase in terms of the global exposure and brand recognition for Tobago. More than that, looking at new partnerships. As you are aware, we would have had relations, for example, with BA. One of the things we are now looking at is renegotiating some of those current airlift contracts because it may not be at the moment as economically viable for Tobago. Further to that, we've also seen what would have been strengthened relationships with key tour operators and travel agents, within the coming out of the world travel market, and further efforts with regards to market research and insight gathering. Just to mention a few, but as I said to you earlier on, some of which are more long-term in nature to see what the benefit would be down the road for Destination Tobago.
Right. So, Chair, if I'm to look at it from a 2-year time span, 2 into a 3-year time span, I know you may not. I think you're the administrator for less than a year, right? Right.
Yeah, a few months.
But, okay.
At this division.
But in terms of Tobago as a destination, we've been going to and if we're just going to use WTF, has these trips, we're looking at $3 million in overseas travel. In terms of heads in beds, has there been an increase over the last 2 years into 3 years as it relates to our marketing of the island? Because we could go, my question is, we could go on these trips, we can attend all the trade shows, but what are we seeing in return? Are we seeing that come back? Are we seeing people saying, okay, fine? And I'm sure based on that you can make your projections, because if we say in 2 years, if we say it's long term, you can make your projections accordingly. So are we seeing anything down the road?
Senator, if I may, Madam Chair, share an experience, because I would have attended World Travel Market with the Chief Secretary. And if I could share an experience at the World Travel Market, we were there at our booth, and we saw 2 curious gentlemen just, lingering, and look as though they're looking for information. So we would have started the conversation. And these were 2 gentlemen that, from 2 football teams. They were in England, and they observed when we had the Commonwealth Youth Games that we had the beach football facility at Poland. So they came looking to see if they could make the contact. They were from Nottingham Forest Club and Ajax Club. And from that immediate engagement, plans are afoot for them to come next year to have, to play, they could bring the club so they could play the game here. So, sometimes when I am amazed when I'm sitting there, the kind of interactions in the fishing, the kind of opportunities for fishing as tourism, for diving, especially in Speyside and those areas. And when you sit in those meetings and people say about the kind of reef of Speyside that looks as though it's in the Pacific, and the opportunities for marketing the island, sometimes I must hasten to say, probably not exact in quantifying, but when you're there at those meetings, even the meeting with BA, I was present when we were negotiating the cost down with BA, and it's not because of Tobago's market, because we are doing well. It is because of St. Lucia's, because we share with St. Lucia, and St. Lucia is confronting with some challenges because they have some of their major resorts closed for renovation. So because of that, we had to negotiate, and we did well with BA, and they admitted that we were strong in negotiating that cost down. So it's not only for the Division of Tourism and the Tobago House of Assembly. We are the coordinating in having the hoteliers there. Caribbean Airline, we had Blue Waters in Mantle Lodge, and a lot of resorts in the island. We are creating the facility for them to come and market their product, right? If I could hasten to add that, Senator Hislop.
Is it possible, Chief Ad, when you were there, that the conversation could have taken place that some of the persons who are not going to St. Lucia come to Tobago?
Having all sorts of conversations, but there's a limit. Because what we have to do, the persons who are going to St. Lucia, they are of a kind, they kind of stock, the room stock that we have in Tobago is not premier enough for them to come to our island. So that informs the strategic decision that if we have to grow as a destination, we have to increase the quality of the room stock to 5-star, because they probably have 3-star hotels on the island.
Chair, so what you, sorry, Chair, what the chief is getting at is that we really need quality room stock in Tobago. Quality room stock 5-star and above.
Yes, we need quality, yeah. We need better, yeah. So
And that will create an environment for additional heads in beds.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Chief Admin and Mr. Murray, I'm back to you again. We've spoken about monitoring, evaluation, and whatnot. I just reading your submission at page 104. Question 4 is, what is the THA's role in preventing, detecting, and investigating fraud regarding projects? I suppose it's just really to ask the hard question. Have there been any instances of the fraud being detected in projects? What is the process once that is identified? And well, if you can give any details around any actual cases of that and how that is going.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Administrator Murray has committed to taking that question.
It is always very challenging as an island where almost everyone knows each other to be able to ensure that there is always fair trade and fair practices. And so that is a challenge. Almost everyone knows someone or is related to someone. However, the principles are the principles, and they must be upheld. And I don't think the Assembly, the THA, or any division pales in comparison to any other institution in terms of how we deal and how we detect fraud. And in many instances, we do not hesitate, right? We do not hesitate to deal with fraud and to deal with it. And obviously, I think the best example is what is within the public space right now. The THA, this administration has an ongoing audit which was recently completed into a major program under the Division of Infrastructure. Well, I was not there then, but that is something that is ongoing and that has been investigated in terms of the many contracts that were given to contractors, many of which will reveal that many of the works that were done, some were never done. Some of them were overpriced, overcosted, and that in itself is an indication that steps are and will be taken when we do see instances of fraud, instances of collusion. And right now, steps are going to be made to deal with that situation. Many of these contractors have not been paid, right? Have not been paid until the findings are complete and until we can verify. And we all know that it's almost very difficult to recover overpayments and how it occurs. And when there are instances, we ensure that we provide as much assistance to the police. In fact, right now we have provided assistance to the Anti-Corruption Bureau of a gentleman in Trinidad who would have showed up and he could not declare where his source of funds were, and he pointed to the THA. And I want to say here, and I want to say publicly, the THA does not pay contractors in cash, right? And so we do not hesitate to take the necessary steps, and also to ensure that disciplinary procedures take place where officers are concerned who are engaged in fraud. We need to ensure, and we continue to ensure, that as far as our accounting and financial control and auditing is concerned, that it continues to operate effectively and efficiently. Segregation of duties, ensure that not one person is in charge of and controls a major part of the financial aspects or even the budgetary aspects of it, and that there is continuous monitoring. We are also shielded now by that additional layer of protection, because prior to that, many of the overall decisions were done and taken place by the administrator. Now we have the PDAC being an important insertion in that process that guides in the transparency. And so the THA will continue to uphold all the necessary laws, financial regulations, and ensure. But one of the things, though, is that we have to ensure is that the necessary training takes place. It's sad that we do now have a generation of persons now that we take for granted that they know about the regulations and the financial regulations, and we are seeing in many instances where it is not deliberate but carelessness, and that is something that we need to address, and we are thankful that we have a strong internal audit department, and that is also bolstered by, obviously, because we were paid a nice visit recently by the Auditor General's Department, who does have a very strong interest in major projects, especially in Tobago. And so all of that are the added layers we have of protection and oversight, whether at the project level, project management level. In fact, one of the things that we have insisted over the years, and that I have ensured, that costings that we try to separate, even within your division, that kind of affinity that can lead people into problems. And so, for example, what the THA, and the good thing that the THA has the ability to do, is that what we have done now is that when we do our tender evaluation, stuff like that, we borrow a lot from other divisions. So in many instances, you don't have self unto self, where many of the same people who costed projects and stuff like that are involved in the process. And so we frequently borrow. We borrow engineers, we borrow QS, we borrow technical experts from many divisions, and that gives us an added layer of protection where we know that in many instances they may not have been part of the process and they are not there to collude with anyone.
Follow up on that. Thank you so much, Mr. Murray. And come back to the Chief Administrator. And I guess the question was deflected because it specifically spoke about infrastructure. But I just want to refer to page 8 of the submission, where we'd asked with respect to project management protocol, risk management policy, fraud policy, whistleblower policy. We don't have it there, conflict of interest policy, right? And the submission says that for items 2 to 5, which should be project management protocol, risk management policy, fraud policy, and whistleblower policy, there are no policies applied across all divisions. However, consideration is being given to implementing such policies. Okay, and my question really is, when?
One of the benefits of sitting in forum like this is...
One minute, Chief Administrator, I really can't hear.
You can't hear?
Sorry, I've been struggling, but just now it just went way below my...
I'm so soft-spoken. It's a curse. I'm very soft.
I appreciate that. That's why I've been, trying to strain my earbells, but this time I couldn't strain it.
Right. So we need to do the research and get the policies done. It's important because I don't want to be called again before this August committee to discuss this. So are we going to get it done? I pledge that by the end of next fiscal, we're going to get the policies done. Of course, we know that there are some legislation that will guide us, so we have to do the necessary research and get the policy done.
Can I ask you to pledge for a little shorter time than the end of next fiscal? And I know why I'm asking that. Okay, because
So may I do
we have a
one-
life.
May I do one per quarter, please? Because one per quarter, I pledge that.
Okay, so you want to identify which one first quarter? So first quarter ends when, January? Yeah, first quarter ends end of January, you know.
December. No, so let's start from the first January to March. All right.
So that means you're giving me 2 at the end of March.
All right. So
Because you see, we're going to follow up, so I don't want to,
Yes.
you know, so we could get 2 at the end of March.
I'll try my best.
Yes, thank you.
I'll try my best.
Right, so that when we ask for the further information, you'd also have time to specify which 2.
I just want to hasten to add that any policy coming from the Tobago House of Assembly must be approved by the Executive Council, and therefore I do not influence the entire, have control over the entire process.
Yeah.
So
we understand that, but
Yeah.
we at least expect that you say it was done and it's before the Executive Council.
yes, thank you very much.
Member Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. As was said before, we encourage the public to send in questions. And a member of the public, and I'm reading it as I got it. Has there been any changes on the payment of contract workers' gratuity on a prorated basis? Some personnel who have worked on contract, some persons who have not completed their contract, but done more than 1 year with satisfactory performance to take up public service posts, have not been eligible to get gratuity.
All right, so this matter is engaging our attention because we have a contract policy. Terms and conditions. Terms and conditions of contract. Okay, guidelines for contract employment in the Tobago House of Assembly that was done by the Tobago House of Assembly and approved by the Executive Council. We also have the national guidelines that was done by the CPO. There is a lack of, in some areas, we have some challenges. For example, as you would have highlighted, the national policy would say that once the employee terminates, you're not eligible for gratuity, prorated gratuity. We have the instance of our administrators said they won contract, they came into the Tobago House of Assembly of public servants, and the issue is whether they are entitled to the gratuity. When they look at the THA policy, it gives them some hope. When we look at the national policy, there is no hope. I am cursed for working with the Auditor General's Department for most of my life, so I tend to gravitate to the national policy. But I must respect the role of the Executive Council in the formulation, implementation of policy, and Section 75 of the THA Act specifically says that the THA could engage persons on contract, I'm paraphrasing, subject to government guidelines. When I think of government guidelines, it takes me to the CPO. So it's a matter that we're trying to resolve, whether persons are entitled. I know persons are waiting anxiously for us to come to a conclusion, but we will soon come to a conclusion on this matter. Senator Hislop.
Thank you, Chief. Chair, if I could just one question to pose to Administrator for the Division of Works. In the budget document, I think it's under recurrent expenditure, there was a line item that there was a significant jump. I don't know if you could share some clarity on that. The rent and lease that moved from, I think, was about 13 million or somewhere there to a significant figure. Could you give us some clarity on that?
Right, so the rent and lease program under the recurrent. The division many years ago took a policy decision that it was almost difficult for them to maintain its own fleet of vehicle and equipment, especially in construction projects, development projects. And so the administration at the time took a decision to go the rent and lease of leasing all their equipment needs, right? And while that would have worked over the years, certainly it has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. Particularly of notice, when I came last year, I looked at the 10-year span and spend, and I would have realized that it would have grown significantly. The explanation I was given for 2022 figures, the spend had jumped significantly, 23, sorry, was because of the 2022 issue where we had a lot of landslides and mudslides and stuff throughout Tobago. So that year was particularly challenged, where we had a lot of responses that we had to do, and the division is the main division that deals with that sort of thing, because TEMA, for example, do not have equipment. And so everything is channeled back to the division. So a lot of it, I am told, since I was not there, would have been because of that sort of unnatural kind of occurrence. And therefore, a lot of equipment will mobilize all over. Not only did we have to face that year with clearing of landslides and blocked roads and stuff, but even in Southwest Tobago, we started to have the occurrence of flooding, right? And so some of that had to be utilized to bring flood relief and stuff like that. So I am told that that large expenditure would have been through that period. Nevertheless, this administration has taken a decision, and just before the fiscal year was finished, the last fiscal, with the necessary allocations or reallocations, a sum of over $22 million was spent to purchase road construction equipment for the division. So the division has found that it's hemorrhaging quite significantly through that program. And so we would have decided to once again go the way of having our own fleet of vehicles and equipment. So we are expecting that figure, in fact, my projections are that figure should go back to normal levels, or if not be a cost savings for us, given the type of equipment and the amount that we have invested in that purchase.
Chair, Admin, I hope in the purchase of equipment that there is a robust accountability of operators and drivers of equipment. Because it is one thing for the administration to spend significant monies on the purchase of equipment. And let's be honest and let's be fair with where we operate. And we know that if an operator, if the air conditioning in our operator's machine not working on a day, he is not going to work. He is not going to work. Because this is the field that I'm in. Now I know in private sector, whether the AC working or not, we have a job to do, you're going to complete it. But when you have to treat with other factors in the government sector, and then we know that in the past we have had situations where brand new machines will just automatically stop work and be unserviceable. So I'm hoping that even if the Tobago House of Assembly is making this significant investment in the purchase of equipment, that on top of that, there is a robust monitoring of the equipment and a responsibility that, well, the operators would be held responsible. I don't know how we're going to do it, but that the operators will be held responsible if for some reason, because I could tell you of an experience with a government piece of equipment on a project, that a brand new piece of equipment, the operator was assigned to work on that project. That's in Tobago. And for weeks he wouldn't come to work. And he says to them that the machine have problems and the technician need to come to check it. Nothing wrong with the machine. But I know about the equipment. You don't know about the equipment. So I could tell you something wrong with it. And nothing you do can force me to work it. So I'm just hoping that after we spend this kind of money to reduce the rent and lease, that we put the necessary checks and balances in place, that operators, drivers can be held accountable And not only that, that people don't start taking off things off of brand new equipment and selling them on the market. We know how it goes. So I'm just hoping that those things can be put in place to help with that.
And so with the intended acquisition, because there is some lead time, so most of these equipment should probably arrive sometime around the end of January. So we have already looked at the training of the requisite staff, not in terms of operation, but in terms of maintenance. In fact, the good thing is that under the procurement legislation now we are required to ensure that there's an effective maintenance plan, right? And so that now behoves us to ensure that we do so. We have also been looking at added layers of security, in fact, ensuring that these equipment are kept in a safe and secure manner, because it's almost ashamedly I say that we have found in many instances of sabotage. You sabotage equipment so a private contractor can get a contract, and so you get nothing to do. You might get something on the side for the sabotage. So those are things that we have looked at, we explored. We are not going to turn a deaf ear to it and believe that it doesn't exist. So we have been exploring all the options as to how we are going to ensure that the equipment are maintained and certainly can give us the extension. Now we know and we anticipate that we may have some fallout from this, because the number of contractors that we'll be able now to hire. But if I may say,
how does that affect the private capacity on the island? How do you now factor in that and the fallout, as you said, the fallout in employment and all of that? Are we now creating a situation that we're going to make the Tobago House of Assembly's staff complement even bigger? And taking the work from a capacity that we've built over the years in terms of our private sector. So are we now saying that in the construction sector, that the THA now becomes the largest employer, and that private sector capacity that we're trying to build out and to make as robust as possible in Tobago would now be affected?
Well, that is going to be the least of my worry or concern, because we will actually find work for many operators and drivers who do nothing. So it isn't a case where we are going to be hiring, but we have a large cadre of persons, remember, through the years who have not been operating equipment or have the need to because we have been contracting. We actually will find work for them. So it isn't going to be any requirement for additional recruitment. What it just requires is that we ensure that persons are trained and, as said, given the responsibility. But then there is a fundamental issue that we have to look at. It's always a balance between with the Tobago House of Assembly and how small economy, and it's because of the size of a very contracted private sector that you don't create some sort of imbalance. But we have to get past the philosophy that my livelihood is to buy equipment just to get the government to work. And outside of that work, I do nothing else with it. So a person will come and I will pay him a certain amount of money for his truck to move materials, and he makes one trip for the day and he gets $1,800 or whatever. But in a private scenario, he'll have to work the whole day for that. And so, one of the developmental pillars when we were in terms of Vision 2030, and one of the findings that was noted is that for the government to be on a pathway and a road to productivity, we have to deal with the culture of dependency. A dependency where people buy equipment and invest specifically because the government is the only one who they are going to look at. And so when we create and continue to sometimes to support the culture of dependency, what we are actually doing is creating a disservice to the private sector, because we are not allowing them to be innovative, we are not allowing them to grow, and we are creating a culture where they just depend on the THA. But it is always a delicate balance as to ensure that we don't destabilize, but at the same time, I am telling you, I have been there for over a year, sir, and it has become a great disadvantage. The service that we thought would have been a solution has become now, a hotbed for corruption, for collusion, for demotivation of staff who have nothing to do. And so to a certain extent, it has become, to me, even more of a problem than a solution. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to strike a balance. I know there will be some persons who will be affected because we will no longer be able to retain the services of many of these persons. But I can wake up comfortable tomorrow knowing that I didn't pay for an excavator that sat and did nothing for 3 months, and that cost me $180,000. Right? That's management.
That speaks to management admin, because
yes.
and I know we're doing an inquiries. It's not a conversation, but if we are seeking to build out, if we recognize that a private sector is what is key to economic development and economic growth, one of the areas of that is your construction sector. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to remove that element, then I think in the construct of Tobago's economy, it is going to create a bigger problem when you take private sectors out of it. Because the thing about it is that I've worked on government projects, and we've been required to work for the entire day. And so that speaks to how do you manage it more than removing that private sector element and saying, I have workers who need to work, so I'm going to bolster the establishment at the public sector. And that's going to affect private sector. Now, when you affect a private sector, you're not affecting just the contractor, but you're affecting that ripple. So I hear your submission, but I think it's something that we need to pay very close attention.
Just to respond, it is not a removal, but simply a reduction of the reliance, right? And it's almost a do or die situation, because we cannot continue to find, because almost every other area of expenditure is affected because we have to channel all these funds to support our rent and lease program.
Yes, Member Webster Roy.
Mr. Administrator Murray, while you're working towards expanding your fleet, have you started preparing your mechanical workshop and your team for this extra workload? Tell me what has been happening.
Right, and so just want to reiterate a little and expand. So we have had meetings already, and we have had discussions towards how we are going to have a rigid maintenance program. The mechanical workshop, we are hoping that we'll be able to do some adjustments to the mechanical workshop, and with persons specifically assigned for overseeing the equipment. As I said, we have already gone to the extent of probably trying to identify a more secure area, because the mechanical workshop has often been an area where almost anything can happen. And so we have spoken about trying to readjust address the management aspects, having maintenance schedules developed, having training taking place for the relevant persons, so persons can see that they don't know how to operate equipment, or either they have caused damage to the equipment. And so we are doing as much as we can to ensure that we are going to get it out of expected lifespan from the use of these equipment, and that it will redound to the benefit of the division. In fact, this year we are hoping that the cost savings from rent and lease would be able to assist us in the other shortfall areas, because notably the division has been starved of funds. Our development project allocation this year is only enough just to pay the wages of workers. All right? This year we have received the lowest allocation we have ever received for development. So Senator Hillsop, so for example, we see rent and lease jumping, but for example, over the last couple of years when we had allocations for the development program ranging from 60 to 70 million, it has now fallen to $40 million, which is just exactly what is the wage component under that program. And so the cost savings is important. We know that we cannot exact more from the central government or the THA. And so we have to look at the ways of cost savings, and we are hoping that is going to be one of the areas. In fact, we are hoping that the cost savings from that will be able to buy material and supplies so that the people will be able to have something to do when the day comes.
Okay, I do acknowledge this after 6 o'clock, and I guess you'll have to find your way back home. Yes, so I have one last question, and the inquiry is at an end, and it's not a long question. And I understand that the Comprehensive Economic Development Plan, Mr. Richards, I want to call it CEPD, but you might ask me what's that, but that's in the submission. I understand that has been terminated since 2017. Okay, I also understand that you've had allocations under it. But if you could tell us what are the other areas to which the allocation in 2023-2024, what were the areas that allocation was transferred to?
Madam Chair, the details of that, could we submit the information?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get the details of that in writing. And as I say, 6:04, so I want to thank you all so much for coming. It's been productive, Madam Chief Administrator, but we have so many more questions, we'll send them in writing. But, you know, it's really helped, I'm sure, enlighten us and the members of the listening public. So at this stage, I want to thank you all. I want to, yes?
Madam Chair, if I could be permitted to make two corrections. The mandate letters in the conversation with my colleague, he said June 2023 is really June 2022.
Sorry.
2022,
right?
Okay.
And then Member Julian would have spoken about the unspent balance. I just want to share with her, in the instance of the Tobago House of Assembly, our unspent balance doesn't go back into the consolidated fund. It is retained, according to the THA Act, in the THA fund account and used for capital expenditure. Right?
So thank you so much for those corrections, Chief Administrator. So as I said, I want to bring this part of the public hearing. I want to suspend this part of the meeting. I want to thank all the members of the THA who came, the Chief Administrator, Administrator James Guy, the Director of Planning, Mr. Jackson, the Director of Land Management, Ms. Wallace, the Director of Policy and Performance Management, Ms. Digazon, Administrator Chim, Chief Technical Advisor Richards, Technical Advisor Hazel, Administrator Murray, Accounting Executive 1 Davidson, Human Resource Officer 2 Bennett Douglas, Administrator Skeet, Technical Advisor Culture Thomas, Human Resource Officer 3 James Douglas, and Management Accountant Ross Blake for coming. I wish you all a safe journey home. The conversation will continue. Otherwise, we have some deadlines already that we'll hold you to, Madam Chief Administrator. But again, thank you on behalf of all of us. I therefore now bring this part of the meeting to an end. The meeting is now suspended. Thank you.